1 second. Welcome to the greatest time ever. Boom, boom in the building. It has been a very great week. Great in the aspects of every week is great. Every day is great. Every moment is great. Start programming that into your mind. Every moment is great. Every week is great. Every time that you're going through something is great. It may seem horrid. It may seem scary. It may seem like, oh my God, it's taking you out of the place. But remember, everything's taking you out of this space with yourself so you can actually start releasing. The best way to actually understand starting and releasing, we're going to be getting into the vicarious fields of understanding of we're shifting from this aspect in our mind of reacting to the projection and understanding that our thoughts power that projection. So I made a couple posts earlier today, and one of the posts that I posted was, and I was scribing notes, like, because I thought about with notes, and I said, I was like, looking at things like Juneteenth, looking at things like George Floyd, women, children getting trafficked and all this shit. What is it really? Everything outside of you, based in that programmable sense of your illusion, is only powered by you and your thought. If you never turned on the TV and you were in the middle of a fucking cave, or you were in the middle of a monastery for 60 years, would you even know that habit of shit that happened? No, because you would have to come into that space and become acclimated with that space based on you needing to understand to interact within that space. So we're looking at this. So the process of you going through your death, is you're going through your shit backwards. That's why you got to go back through everything that you ever been through, because you're not ending, you're beginning. That's the truest aspect. You're not ending, you're beginning. One of the things when it comes to our work, understanding these vicarious fields of thought that we're going to be getting into tonight, one of the topics that we're going to get into is understanding the power of what was said to us and how we said things and how those things take root. Like, one of the things that I want to get into tonight is you're think about the aspect, like when you hear in a movie, when you see movies, TV, or you heard it said to you in a certain point in time where you were like, I know how niggas were at that age, I'm protecting you. Or every time if you in that feminine, you're a woman and you say into that sense of niggas are stupid, I'm trying to tell you about how men are. But we have to understand that as long as we're living through the support system that is our trauma, that shit doesn't come from anywhere. Everything that you tap into, everything that you touch, it doesn't come from it's not, it's magically appearing. It must come into this space. It must come into this current space based on a vicarious field of thought or in your auric field. That's how everything comes into your space. That's how you keep attracting what you keep attracting and what you keep going through and all of that shit going through your space. You're looking for, you have this, everything that you're taking into that space is going to be challenged based on what you set within yourself. If it's not within me, then one thing that came into me earlier, my earlier internal work was, if it's not really within me, then what am I setting the urge for? What am I really missing? What am I really upset about? What am I really mad at? What is it really? So take some thought process. Like, most of the times we treat, when people come into their shadow work, people came into their consciousness, people came into their awareness, that identity, they treated it like another job. So they wanted to get benefits from it. So you always heard motherfuckers talk about, yeah, I got these crystals and I'm studying this book or I'm reading this. Even we've all done that aspect to a certain point in time. I read this book, I got this crystal, I did this, this, and this, and then I didn't get this, this, and this, but then I got something like this. You're treating it like a job. So you're only going to do as much as long as because you're in search for something. The whole point, the whole purpose is you're releasing from the need. You can say you don't need or want anything all day, and you have an idea in your mind. If something pops up in your head when you say you don't need or want anything, and you say I don't need or want anything, but the thing that pops up is pussy. The thing that pop up is you getting your back blown out. There's something that you got to assess. Every time that you say you don't need or want something, and something's going to pop up that's going to challenge in this space of duality, is going to be like, okay, so you don't need this, you don't want this, and then the point of us with that vicarious field is to understand, why is it there? What is its purpose? Why did I always go to that in the first place? What is that? What is the tone? What does that set up for me in my space? It's easy to look at from the external aspect, and you treat it like a job where you're a garbage man, or you're a garbage man, or you're a nurse, or you're in that same job field, and you feel that you want to keep going for the basics. And then it's a whole different aspect when you actually taking accountability, when you're actually comprehending what you're communicating with, when you're actually taking yourself into that moment in time, when you're actually allowing yourself to go through those periods, when you're actually allowing those emotions to come up by your own accord, allowing not trying to control your emotion. It's understanding your emotion. Trying to control your emotions is just as bad as avoiding them. It's about allowing yourself to feel the emotion so you learn how to transmute, so you become open. Think about the Incredible Hulk. He was like, my secret, I'm always angry. You're always live. All these, you just keep giving it, you gave it definitions so that whenever it happened, you could subconsciously be like, well, I was angry, so I won't do this when I'm angry. Or you made a decision based on when you were angry. Then immediately you felt bad afterwards. But what came out was needed to come out. You just haven't learned how to, a lot of times we just haven't learned how to control that aspect because you're still in, oh my God, in fear of something, or still in, I don't want to do that part. I don't want to hit that part yet. You're still dealing with it. I don't want to let this go. I don't want to deal with that yet. I don't want to have that conversation. I'm not ready for that yet. And it's all right. You just got to be honest with yourself. It's only when you avoid it that it comes up and it becomes something detrimental and it hits you hard. It hits you hard as fuck. It's only when you avoid. It's only when you're based in avoidance that shit's going to come up and it's going to hit you right across your fucking forehead and knock your ass clean the fuck out. It's only based in avoidance. One of the things that I had to learn with most of the shit was only based in me avoiding the shit. Me not accepting something about myself. Me not knowing something about myself ultimately. That was ultimately the factoid. That was ultimately the factoid of thought, or the factor, the constant of why I was stuck in a lot of spaces that I was in. Why I was stuck charging a lot of spaces. Give you a hilarious ass story. This shit happened 15 minutes ago. From earlier today, I was chilling out. I was getting ready, like getting myself ready for things, getting myself ready for the day. And I text my mother. I simply called my mother. I was like, I wanted to get the directions to my grandmother's grave. I've never been to my grandmother's grave in the physical, but I've been to my grandmother's grave plenty of times. I've went there, have conversations with her, and she came. She was like, "Go look at the gravesite real quick." Like it was funny because it wasn't from a space of trying to go find it. It was like my mother explained the gravesite, the directions. I'm telling her the directions before she even said it. She was like, "Why do you even call to ask?" I was like, "I just wanted to get some clarity on it." Opened up that space. 15 minutes ago, my mother had sent me a text. She asked me when was I going to come by the house. Same thing always asked into that space. I knew it was coming. I got shit I'm doing all week, like won't be here next week. Got a whole bunch of stuff, like got my retreat going on next week that I got to get into, a whole bunch of other things. My mother sent me a text and she was like, don't cut your parents out of your life. Don't cut, or your siblings. The only thing I said in reply to my mother was, everything's in place as it needs to be in place. And if it's supposed to come up, it will come up. Never got a reply back. Because I'm at that point where it's like, the only reason, because I know it in my heart, in your path of my heart, I know the only reason that my mother is calling me or coming into this contact with me is based on something, based on an emotional tagline. I know that she's coming into the space and it's based in a sense of emotion. It's based on a sense of that feeling that she has not yet dealt with. That say, like, if that happened to me 8 years, if that happened to me 6 or 7 years ago, I would have been either emotional. I would have said, I'll think about it. I would have lied my ass off. And then ultimately, I would have lied, say, yeah, I'm going to come by. And then not come by, and then sit there waiting for my mother to hit me up and hit me back up and say, hey, you didn't come by and what happened, just so I could lie again, just so I can make up this other avoided story all over again. But now, in the current state, for myself, now I'm sitting there like, you know what? Why do I need to lie? What is my real reason if I did lie? I had to go back and look at the reasons that I lied before. I had to go look back at every time that I lied to be accepted. I no longer need or in this want to be accepted. I'm no longer looking for acceptance. I've found acceptance within inside of myself, into the deepest cores, going into no self, going into the deepest dark aspects of myself, and I've purged those aspects I've done that purge. I've done that internal work. I went into those aspects. So that field of thought, or that vehicle that's usually being used, can no longer be used inside of my space. That same emotional vehicle is still present in a lot of us when it comes to that sense. That same emotional vehicle is still present. Whether it's a Suburban or a Miata, or you got a Bugatti, whatever the vehicle is, there's an emotional vehicle still present and that you're still dealing with. That's why, as I said before, if I can see it and I react to it, or if I'm triggered by it, that means I'm on that level. It's time for me to assess it. I can't keep looking at it through the same old perception. I can't keep reacting to it based on the same emotional content. I can't keep looking at it as a selfish child of the mind, because I can't create, because when you start looking at things in that narrative, you start changing your perception. A lot of your perceptions are based on the childlike mind. Like Bobby Him always talked about, that childlike mind or the imprints of those traumas, the perceptions and the perspective of that trauma. That's that field of thought that you get stuck in. So a lot of times when you're looking at things, you're looking at it through your you're looking at it through your emotional, or that wound or that filter. You're looking at it through that emotional wound or that filter in order for you to direct and look at it and deal with it. So automatically you get upset. Oh my God, they trying to play me. Oh my God, they trying to do this. No, they doing exactly what the fuck they supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. Yes. You're shifting from this aspect of remember last week we talked about your inner child sitting on that sniping post and is sniping at you and saying, you gonna pay attention to me. If you had never seen Supernatural, you remember when Dean went to hell and he got told that, yo, if I take you off of the torture rack, you got to become the torturer. That's that same instance. You've always been the one pulling that trigger. You've always been the one pulling that trigger. You've always been the one feeding that space. It's all been coming from your projected ass, from your thought. When we think about, go to the aspects when they say, oh my God, the calcified pineal gland. So if there's if my pineal gland is crystallized or it's crystallized, it still is being used. But now the spectrum of thought, my spectrum of my emotions, my energy that I have the ability to access is now split, broken down into these different emotions, broken down into my different senses. So I'm sitting here trying to learn my senses. You're learning everything that you ever learned down to that microscopic level is what you're relearning. Your senses, what your senses corresponded to. Some of your senses based on touch, the physical aspect, it was based into an aspect of a traumatic experience. So you got to relearn you're basically relearning your sense of touch. Because of my sense of touch, the way that I learned my sense of touch is similar to like when you teach a little kid hot, cold. When you're teaching a kid hot and cold based in a fear aspect. So the only way that you get to keep learning hot and cold, bad and good, is based on these two extremes. It's always going to be based on the traumatic experience, the trauma, the repetition of that trauma, what symbolized it, who hit you with all of those, who taught you hot and cold, good and bad, who told you not to dress a certain way. Half of the things that you're getting upset with is based on something that you saw based on from your inner child. You got niggas all in your inbox. You got niggas in your inbox. You got bitches in your inbox. You got all these niggas in your inbox. We'll start with niggas first. You got all these niggas in your inbox talking about that pussy is theirs. You go on a whole damn rant talking about somebody trying to own you and taking ownership of you. But why is it really bothering you? It's time to do some assessment, because it can be deep down that the way that you're responding or reacting to it is very much well indeed is how you saw your mother. It's how you saw how your mother how your mother addressed herself to a bunch of men or addressed herself to your father, or even going deeper, because it gets a lot deeper. That's one of the deeper aspects when we go into the deeper of the therapy sessions. There was things that happened to you while you were still in the womb. It just didn't happen when you came out. The entire existence of your conception was based in a trauma, was rooted in trauma, was based in emotional aspects, was based in that emotional catalyst. Your whole entire conception. When you just get to the point of like, my dad wouldn't shit, my mom wouldn't shit, and all of that, okay, cool. But the same reason that you're sitting there, you got 19, you got like 9 to 10, you got different fathers and different baby mothers and all of these aspects of relationships, and you only seem to conceive with the asshole ass nigga. That was given to you in the womb. That was a reflection of your womb. That's why when you have your kids, if you have children, nieces, nephews, and kids, and your kids are always up under you, they're letting you know something about the source of the womb. everything down here is going to be showing you something. Everything is showing you something. But if I'm not taking the accountability, if I'm not becoming open to it in that vulnerability, all I'm going to do is keep making the same mistake. All I'm going to keep doing is doing the same shit. One of the biggest things that I had to go through a couple years ago, from the conception, you're a concept. They had you in your whole head. They had you in your head. Your mom sat there while you were in the womb and had ideas about you and spoke them over the womb and spoke them to that silver cord that was linked to your soul. That was the first line. That was one of the first physical lines of your soul contract. Right there, that silver line. And you made the decision to come down into that shit. Whether you know it, whether you want to accept it or not, that's on you. But you were like, okay, I'm going to come down on that. You came down based on your mom's hopes, and everything that happened in your life was in the result of that aspect. The true aspect. So now you're looking like why your mother is the way that she is. Now look at the way you do things. Look at the way that you're saying things. Look at the way that you act. Look at the things that you're saying. Does it sound familiar? Why does it sound so easy to say it? The easiest shit that you're saying out the flip of your tongue through emotion is sometimes some of the truest shit that you're ever going to say, because you're only used to speaking it through the emotional aspect. So you sitting there upset. I became an enemy less than But you only going to be able to go into the depth of that aspect and have that conversation to the depth that you're having it with yourself. I can't have any depth of a conversation with anyone only deeper than I go into myself. So that's why when you're going through this healing process, and this is going to be that first topic we get into, one hell of an introduction. Welcome to the Friday Night Lectures. That main aspect of you're breaking away from the 9-to-5 mentality. Remember, I always talk about that LOC mentality. That 9-to-5 mentality is deeper than just your job. That 9-to-5 mentality is synonymous with your relationships, your friendships, your everything that you do is based in that 9-to-5 mentality. Everything you're doing is based in that 9-to-5 mentality, that 12-by-12 mentality. If I do this many days, this many hours, you can't, there is no detachment from that cord that's attached to your tongue. You wrote it. That your umbilical cord, that cord, you wrote that. You wrote that was the stream of your first thoughts going into that space. That was your contract coming into play. That's why when we look at stillbirths, kids dying early, we don't get into all this. We don't get deep into this tonight. Stillbirths, transitions, all of that shit has a plan. There's a play. It all has a play. It all has a point to play. There's nothing. We gotta get out of this mindset of you can't say on one side that everything happens and there's a science and there's a method, there's a probability, there's a train of thought to it. And then on the other side, you want to keep saying, hey, that happened for this, that just happened to happen. Everything lines up based on your original field of thought. Everything lines up based on whether you're ready to accept or not accept. You're in the space of duality. You're going to get every lesson that you need, and you're going to get every distraction that you ever need. You're going to be sitting there looking at all these damn distractions, stuck on these distractions. See, this is why we can't do this, and this is why I can't do. Is it we or is it you? Were you really mad at George Floyd? Or were you really upset when George Floyd? What really bothered you about it? Or was it the relationship with your father you never had? or the thought process of, because there's always going to be something connected to it. Hell, are you mad at Candace Owens? Or are you mad at Candace Owens? Or does the way that she speaks reminds you of your mother? Or the woman that raised you? What are you really upset about? Every time that you want to use these emotional vehicles to stay going the same course, what do you think is going to come up? Everything that was based in your unseen anyway. So that same conversation that you ain't having with your mother, or you're not having about your mother, or you're not going in about your mother, or the same perception that you held about your mother, that physical wound, that visible wound is the same wound that has your perception and your perspective and has you getting, so you saying, you can say, I remember saying to myself all the time, the distaste I had in my mother's passive aggressiveness, the distaste I had in my pops and his parenting style, the distaste of it. But in order for me to continue living in that space with myself, in order for me to keep doing what I was doing, with the support being my trauma, the event, I had to keep that perception or that idea in my mind. So sometimes when something was going very, very good, this is self-sabotage. Sometimes when things are going very, very good, in that sense of everything was in a stabilized sense, since I'm still imbalanced and I don't comprehend why I'm imbalanced, guess what I would do? I'd be just as passive aggressive as my mother. I'd be just as narcissistic as, or in the aspects, I'd be just like my pops in that same space. And then I play from either end, I'm trying to play the victim. Because as soon as something comes I'm playing the victim. You want to keep playing that victim role, that lack mentality. You want to keep doing what you're doing. You don't want to let shit go, because you let shit go is like, who am I? Every time something sheds off, it brings a new version of yourself to the table. It brings a new set. It brings you to the table. New set. Oh, it's a new set of rules on the table for me right now. How am I going to interact with my space? But every time we try to go back to that old aspect of yourself, how you used to be, what you used to do, what you used to say. But I did that. You can't go back there. It don't exist anymore. The emotions, the emotional underline, the emotional energy of that space no longer exists for you to go back to it. Take it, give you an ask. We're gonna build it out with a story. Think about your relationships. In most relationships, you treat it as a job, necessity. I can cook and I can clean. When I hear I can cook and I can clean, all I hear is I can feed my traumas and I can keep my behaviors cleaned up. That's all I hear. That's what you're trying to sell. Every time you say I can protect and provide, all that means is I can keep my shit in alignment. I can keep, once again, my behaviors and my traumas in alignment. As long as you agree to this contract, everything will be good. You can have everything that's within this aspect of this lifestyle. I will maintain it based on this lifestyle, as long as I get the benefits of what it looks like to nourish myself, what it looks like to protect and provide. You're going in there wanting something. I don't go into spaces wanting anything. So I always leave out with exactly what the fuck I need. You're gonna leave out with exactly it is that you're supposed to have in that space. But when you're stuck in that mindset with yourself of, but I can do it this way, everything you're gonna pull down is gonna be based into that space. You're always gonna try to use. They're like, I use an example. My mother my mother has a whole smart TV in her room. She went to one of the little rent-to-home places and got herself the flat screen TV, the smart TV. My mother doesn't have Wi-Fi. My mother does not have Wi-Fi. She does not have internet. She just has basic cable television. She wanted to get the TV to stay caught up. I got a flat screen at my house in her room. Mom, you don't have Wi-Fi. It's a whole smart television. Why did you? Because I wanted it. Okay. What you want and what you need. Why? All you're doing is this is the point of that identity that you're trying to maintain. You're trying to stay relevant. You're trying to stay relevant inside of that space. You're still trying to stay sociably happy. You're still trying to stay sociably compliant. You're still trying to stay sociably in this space to avoid going to do what you need to do. It's like I remember listening to my pops all the time. And this was just in shadow work for me. I remember listening to my pops all the time. He was like, I really don't give a fuck about people at all to that narrative. I don't care if they live or die. I remember that was my pop's favorite line. I don't care if they live or die. And I remember like hearing him say this, and my mother would be like, you can't say that. And my pops would always be like, why can't I say that? Yeah. I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I'm like, that sounds so fucking horrible. But now coming to a situation where I'm at now, I'm like, I really don't care. I have compassion and understanding, but I really don't care. If somebody gets knocked off tomorrow, I really don't care. I really don't care. I don't care if somebody thinks that I'm insensitive about it because I'm not coming from an insensitive space. So they're only going to be projecting. I have compassion. So if I look at a story that's on the news, when we look at a story on the news, you look at Sandra Bland. Did you use Sandra Bland as an example? Say her name. Say her name. Do you know her story? Did you know her darkness? Did you know what the fuck she was going through? Did you know any of these aspects on a level of in-depth? Or were you just stuck on the narrative that they just killed off and you still don't know what death truly is? I wouldn't wish death on nobody. I wish death on everyone. Death is, you can't ask for death. You can call for her. You can call for Mother Death. But all of those thoughts are going to come up. That's what happens a lot of times when you go into that darkness with yourself and you going through these shadows. She going to bring up and whisper everything into your ear. Everything into your ear. Every thought that you've ever had. Because she's giving you the scribe of all of your thoughts. She's giving you she's giving you, here's everything that you subscribe to on your subscription list. Are you ready to separate? Are you ready to destroy or end all of these that you subscribe to? Mm-hmm. Like you reaching out to something because you're trying to see yourself in it. She had so much life to live. You don't know that bitch life. Every motherfucker that was up, oh my God, Nipsey Hussle got shot, and you just looking at the outside story, and then all you're doing is looking at your own story and trying to place it into that space. But if you really looked at everything that this nigga did, Saint Nip did, he did damn near, he did more than anybody that you ever seen actually do. What did you learn? You're looking at it backwards. Beginning to end. That nigga's beginning to end. You're supposed to look at it from the end to the beginning. When that motherfucker started doing, when these people start doing their shit, they're setting up to get to their beginning. So when they transition, when you transition, everything that you set up is the shit that you got to look at. That's what's going to be looked at based into your transition. Everything that you did up to that point. So when you even looking at motherfuckers dying all around you, and you got nieces and nephews and cousins and sisters and brothers and mother and father and everybody passing and transitioning around you, all that shit you read about numerology went out the fucking window. All that shit you read about the transition went out the window because you didn't apply it yet. But guess what? That death is going to erupt and bring up those emotional blockages. Those emotional blockages have to come to the surface. If you not going to do it willingly, nigga, I'm going to make you do it. You set the tone for your path. You lined it up. How are you using the energy? How are you doing what are you doing with it? Like right now, you can sit here and say from the bottom of your heart that you hated your mother. You can say from the bottom of your heart that you hated your father. But if they died or they passed, why does it affect you? Hate ain't fucking real. Hate is fear. Hate is fear. You lost, and it's on either end of the game. Even if you loved your mother, the same reasons. That's why we've heard that phrase. The same that they hate me for the same reasons they love me. Duality, polarity. You could have had a great loving relationship with your mother and your father. Great loving relationship with your mother and your father. Then you could have had a hateful, hate-filled relationship with your mother and your father. But the moment that they transition and it brings you to the neutral point, the same reasons that motherfucker is mad because they lost their mother and they love them is the same reasons that the motherfucker that hated their mother and now they feeling the same way with their transition. They going through the same grief process. Because the motherfucker that had love for their mother and everything that their mother did, everything that their father did, hell, even if their father overdid some shit because the mother wasn't there or whatever the story was, or in aspects of the hatred, so they had a lack of, it's always for the same point and purpose. Neither one of them have learned to go forward with those lessons. Neither one of them are willing, neither one of them are in a space of acceptance to go forward in the transition to the next point. You needed that catalyst. As long as this catalyst was present, you could keep using it. But after the transition, then what? So you want to, then what? They gone now, and I don't know what to do with my life. My life went down the drain after my mom passed. My life went down the drain after my mom passed. What? I guess you and your mom had a close. Now I really hated my mother. But she had, and you just synthesize it down into, she had me though. She birthed me. You're telling yourself the answer that you need. You're giving yourself an answer based on comfort. It didn't. But you want to stay in that space with you want to stay contained in that space so it's safety. The hatred you have for your mother, it gave you your entire identity, whether you want to accept it or not. So every time you want to go, because I've had people always be like, but what if my mother doesn't apologize? What if my mother doesn't apologize or doesn't own up or admit to the things that she did or all of these things? Or what if they don't admit that they did me wrong, or you're still looking at it through the wrong scope? It's not based on them giving you this sense of, because then what? It's always going to be a then what. If my mom came to me tomorrow and said, I apologize for all of the things that I did and gave me all of the reasons, then what? It doesn't matter what she does. There's always going to be the then what. What am I going to do? For most of people, most motherfuckers, they want to stay in that place of comfort. So that's why that's why you waiting inside of that space. Ultimately, that's why you keep doing what you're doing. You start treating everything that you do as a job, looking for the benefits. You keep telling your story of my mother did this to me, my pops did this to me, this happened to me at this time. Now what? Who are you telling it to? The people that you're telling it to, they're either going to tell you one or two things. They're either going to make you mad and be like, damn, that's crazy, or what are you doing? You're only going to be able to go as deep as you went into yourself. You got to allow yourself to be led into that position. Telling your story from a place of hurt and not telling your story from a place of ownership is always going to leave you fucked the hell up. It's always going to leave you in that position where everything in your field of thought is automatically built based off of that anyway. The way that you react, the way that you move, the way that you speak. You've been running around your entire life because your entire childhood you was on the run. You got a distaste for police. You got a distaste for the cops. Yeah, fuck the cops. They doing this, and this, and you'll get slaved for you. You didn't read the information, got intellectually smart, slave patrol, and all of this shit. But the real reason is something so simplistic is because your thought process about law enforcement and how the cops fuck with your life. Ashe. The whole way that the cops fuck with your life is what was your first experience with the police? What was your first experience with the law? The fact that your dad was in jail. The fact that your mother was in prison. The fact that your mother or your father was locked up most of your life. So now you sitting there with yourself in that space like that's the root to your internal. That's the root to your darkness. That's the root to your darkness. The correspondent happening outside of you, that injustice that you keep looking at outside of you is because you ain't dealt with that. You ain't sat with yourself. You ain't not sat with yourself about that injustice. Your pops was in and out of prison. Your moms was in and out of prison. So you got a hatred for the cops. But since you don't know the real reason that they were locked up, the synthesis of them being locked up, they were locked up long before. By them avoiding the internal wounds and the internal narratives and their own internal conflicts, what would manifest into your space? If you were always locked up, based on, if we can go, you go all the way back and you look at, you've always been locked up in all this shit. Based in your emotions, you locked away your emotions. You locking away dealing with your emotions. You locking away from healing. You locking away from taking accountability and responsibility. So you on the run. You a fugitive in that sense. What do you think would manifest into your space? Yeah. That's the ultimate. You're not forgiving them for them. You're forgiving them for you. You got to get to a point to where you can thank them for what they did. You got to thank them for what they did, or you're always going to be as long as you have not forgave them in that sense, if you haven't forgave them, then you're always going to be looking for forgiveness for the shit that you do to maintain your behavior, to maintain your job, to maintain your brokenness, to maintain your lack of accountability. You're always going to be surrounded in this vicarious field of thought. You got people around you that never seem to be able to get their life together. They always got a sob story to tell you. They never telling you anything. They never taking any accountability. You finally get upset and say, fuck it. Why you ain't doing this, and this with your life? Then you said it through anger. So now you sat with the emotion a little bit. What happened while you were sitting there in that emotion? That argument, are you blowing up at them? Did it remind you of when your mother used to yell at you? Did it remind you of when your pops used to yell at you? If you were in an orphanage, did it remind you of The motherfuckers that you were orphans with? Mm-hmm. Walk down that line with yourself. Why did you go back and go do that? Because now you're gonna go back when you're not upset, and you're gonna be like, "Yeah, I'm sorry." Da 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 da. Go down this whole damn script to maintain the space, because you met conflict with conflict. But in reality, there's not an excuse anymore. A lot of times we like to stay in that light. It's staying in that light aspect. There's always I don't look for the light I go through the projection and into the darkness in every single space. That's natural, me being in a neutral point. Anything that passes through, I'm going into that darkest point. You say something just like simple. We've done it, and this is the thing. You've done this shit unconsciously the entire time. But you keep trying to, the reason that you're doing it unconsciously is because you're trying to look for yourself inside of it or put yourself in that space. It's like watching a movie about slavery and you're like, I couldn't have been no damn slave. How the fuck do you, what? You looking at yourself now, trying to put yourself into the then. That don't make sense. You will not go back and be like, they wouldn't have made me no slave. They wouldn't have done me like that. I would have did this, and this. You don't know you gotta be there in that space. You have to be of that space to actually experience that. Because guess what? Just by you being able to say that, you're already doing it. You just dressed it up and made it look nice. Because man, they can't tell me to go outside and work all day or do this. I do my own, man. And then you're gonna use you're gonna try to come up with this logical because I'm a hunt, man. Nah, it ain't okay. That sounds nice. That sounds nice. That sounds nice. We need to come together as a people and to do what? To do what? You've seen the examples of coming together as a people. You've seen the examples. The highest point that comes to it is a protest, a rally. The highest point of it is to a protest or a rally. Because everybody came in there in their own emotion, with their own emotional aspect that brought them to that space to collectively come together. But we're all being hurt and we're all oppressed. I'm not oppressed. They keep appropriating our shit. Y'all mad because white girls got asses, and last time that I looked at it in any space, the only thing, your body is, this body that you in is compostable waste. It stays here. So maybe if I change my perspective, am I really upset with them, or am I showing my emotional attachment? Am I just showing my emotional attachment? Okay, that's where the tension builds. That's where the urge builds. We can't have nothing of our own. Everybody wants it. They've been doing that shit for fucking ever. You just keep letting it trickles down. What do you think is going to happen down here? What do you think it becomes down here? From the source, the further away from the source, the more that it degenerates, the more that it breaks down to go back through the cycle, to go back up. But you want to hold on to it. What are you holding on to? You holding on to that image of your mother in your head. You hold on to that image of your father in your head, of what you wish that they were. So now you spend your entire life trying to become the father that you never had. You tried to become the mother that you never had. You try to become these aspects. So now you're going into all of your relationships with that predestination complex, but you never really have a plan. You're basing it on reaction. Someone gives you a plan, and you're like, nah, nah. Because it's gonna take away from my ability to keep feeding my trauma, to keep feeding off of this trauma. This trauma made my identity, made me who I am today. You holding on to your trauma like it's a fucking degree from fucking college. That's your career goal. Now you stuck within that space. Let's get into these ciphers. You're sitting here looking with yourself. You sit there and look with yourself inside of that space with your mindset, where you at, how you thinking, and you just keep doing things the same way, and you wondering why your pattern's the same. You're wondering why you can't seem to assess and let some shit in print, because you got shit in there. You got to let that shit go. If your life is based on, when your life is based in survival, when your life is based in survival, when your life is based on surviving, that's your go-to instinct. Everything you do got to be something based in survival. It could be something as simple as how you wash your clothes, how you take care of yourself, how you feed yourself. Everything else that's layers on top of that to keep your field in perception. Yeah. Let me read that real quick. The first level, the first layer that's actually what we're getting into now. Going into the aspects of understanding and really sitting there with your traumas. Yeah. You got to let that acceptance and expectation. Acceptance and expectations are two different points. We're going to start with that expectation. Expectation will leave you doing your internal work and you'll treat it like a job. Therefore, everything reflected will be based upon as a job and based on benefits. So now every time you go into a space, relationship, friendship, whatever it may be, it's all to feed or charge from that trauma, that traumatic event. And when we remember, it's everything, there's nothing good and bad, it's all positive and negative. That's going to be that. To remove expectation, you got to remove this thought process of bad, good, worse, and you got to remove the human aspect, and you got to go to positive and negative. Because if you were in a space, and use the example, you were in a space and you were in a single parent environment, and because you didn't have the other parent, or when the other parent came into that space, or you had both of your parents, or the development of your parents was your father gave you everything that you wanted, and your mother was the disciplinary, or your mother gave you everything you wanted, and your father was the disciplinary, whatever disposition it came into. If you go back to that thought process and really think back at that, and you look at your relationships and how you created your relationships, you'll notice most of your relationships were every relationship based in trauma was based in survival anyway. Maintaining the behavior, maintaining the identity, not going beyond that point. So you sitting, oh my God, now you look, I had a good life. Okay, you had a great life. Cool. What did you learn? You got to make that shit positive so it doesn't serve you anymore. I want a nigga that my daddy gave me everything that I wanted. So every nigga that I get with got to give me everything that I want, just like my daddy did. Do you understand that that's a traumatic response? Do you understand that you got some abandonment? You have neglect issues? That's a neglect wound on either end of the spectrum. Even if your pops didn't give you shit, it's still a neglect wound. You still have a neglect wound present. How is it neglect? By giving you everything that you wanted ever in a physical sense. That means giving you everything in everything that had an external standard or a monetary value. You were never given the information or the knowledge, the true aspects or the knowledge to why. So you never questioned it. So now you're going into your other spaces in reflection of that, and you're projecting that into a space, but you can't accept the why. That communication ain't shit. You can talk at something all day, but you only can comprehend it based onto the depth of yourself. That's what the emotional trigger does. Every nigga that told you no, or every nigga that told you no, or every nigga that told you yes, every nigga that told you no, you said that nigga was boring. But every nigga that told you yes went upside your head. Every shorty that told you no was boring, but every shorty that let you slide in real easy did your ass dirty or robbed your ass. So you went through a whole series. Why do I keep attracting these motherfuckers? Because they're a part of you. When we get into these aspects, it's time we're breaking away this cycle of reading something and getting intellectually stimulated on some shit of like, use this example to that. Every time a man lays with a woman, the woman imprints a part of that man. Okay, cool. That's the surface. Every time a man lays with a woman, he takes on parts of her to that attraction, to that charge. Okay, that's the surface. Let's talk about how the only way that it can take root and it can now manifest into that space is if it's already present. That shit ain't coming out of nowhere. Your life didn't get horrible and toxic out of nowhere. It was already present. It took root in the that was an intention that you laid. You let that nigga blow your back out. That nigga set intentions. That nigga fed your intentions. You let her ride your ass fucking crazy. She set intentions. Whether she did it, we're doing it unconsciously. So every intention, every father wound, every wound that is present is now an intention. If you're not dealing with it, it's an intention. That's when it comes to your healing must be intentional. Your unseen creates your space. Therefore, it's an intention. Your trauma, the symbolism, the repetition of you always talking about the shit that you've been through. The whole sequence is setting your intention and manifesting. If you come from a space of this is just the way that I am. And it gets even deeper once you have children. You have kids, you got motherfuckers around you, you got kids. Because all you're doing is repeating the same conversation your parents told to you. That same, I know what niggas were about around that age. I know all these niggas always want one thing, you got to protect yourself. Or is the same narrative as when mothers was walking around telling their daughters, lay back, take it, make sure the nigga can take care of you. Same energy in that space. Same energy, same pressure system. Because they came from that same, you came out of that womb into that same space. That's what's living inside of that space. So now you sitting there like, nah, but that's comes to kids, especially with children. You're telling kids shit through the womb, through You're telling, when you're speaking, not even with just kids, anybody that you're imprinting your information on into that space, anybody that's in that auric field, if I'm speaking through my trauma, if I'm projecting through my trauma, that means everything that I say, I can say some shit, I can say some things that really can mean something. But simply because the trauma is still present and is now being pushed forward, that's what's being received. So you projecting, I can't trust, I can't trust, I can't trust, I can't trust. You got to get to the point with yourself where you understand you don't trust yourself. You got to get to the point where you have to get to the point where you saying you do not trust yourself. You have to break yourself down, because that's what every relationship that you're going to get into is going to show you. So you're going through a stream of relationships with yourself where you're saying that all of those niggas, none of them niggas really love me. None of them bitches really love me. Only it's repeating in front of you every fucking time. You want to sign from, first you wanted to sign from Jesus. Now you wanted to sign from your ancestors, and they keep telling you the same shit. You don't love yourself. You don't know yourself. You don't trust yourself. That's what's coming up every single time. Somebody gives you this external sense of, hey, you can't wear your hair like this, you can't do this, and you can't do that, and you can't do this. And then you want to maintain that behavior. You can't tell me. That's what they always trying to do. They're trying to keep us locked down and all this shit. I saw a post 30 minutes ago, and the dude he wrote in there, he was like, yo, so put the first initial of the first person's name that was the most toxic in your life. I looked through all of the comments, everybody putting all these initials in there. I put M for me. I put M for me. Until I started taking accountability and responsibility and going through the healing process, I was the most toxic relationship that I ever was in. Everything outside of me was a reflection of that toxicity that was within me anyway. And as long as it remained toxic, I can remain behaving the same way. I can keep hiding away. And then all I want and need, all you're doing is going to go try. So I went and got this job. Yeah, not reflecting yourself. Because on one end, here's the neutral point. Here's in the neutral point. This is where your truth is. On this part of the point, you never had an example. You never had an example of what love was, but you had all of the examples of what love wasn't. You had all of the examples of what something was, but you never that's what you needed to understand what it wasn't. But you got to take accountability. This is the aspect when you're doing the forgiveness aspect. Once I forgive them for what they did, because they're going through their own shit. They went through their own shit, their own struggles. They went through their own things and brought me into that space. That's when I can open myself up to the process of learning. That's when I can open myself up to the process of becoming vulnerable. That's when I can open myself up to the process that was based on me. Mm-hmm. You sitting there with yourself, oh my God, I don't know. Got to go deeper. You keep treating it like a job, you keep treating relationships like jobs, your friendships like jobs. They give you the handbook to how to deal with them every fucking time. You want to be in my life, you want this, because you stuck on, I put that video up about lifestyle. Lifestyle on the external standard. So now you replaced, now in the same sense when people be like, it's a lifestyle. And in the same way that you used to eat chicken wings and used to go party and hit the clubs and all that shit, and now you're saying you want a different lifestyle, and now you want to be plant-based, and now you want to be a hotep, and you want to do all of this shit, it's still surface level shit. The same reason that you was out partying, eating chicken wings, popping pills, and doing all this other shit in your life and running the streets. You just changed the avenue, but you still on the same streets. That's why you keep reacting to it the same exact way. You still mad, you still upset. It didn't make you any better. It has made you feel good. It didn't make you any better. So now you took the same amount of time. Because time is the basis of your emotions, solidified by that creates your behaviors and your habits. Mm-hmm. You said, "Oh my God, I don't." Saying doing, you just the core is still the same. What's charging is still the same. That's why you keep getting attracted to the same exact things. Now you just went from the pimps of the pulpit. Now you just got spiritual pimps pimping your ass out. Same shit, different. It's the same aspect. That same wound of your father is still present. So now you still meet the same niggas that you met when you was in church or you was going to college. It's the same niggas you meet in the same space because you're not changing anything internally. You're not assessing what's in the internal aspect. You want to stand for something. You want to protest. You want to march. You want to build your entire speech off emotional taglines and behavioral triggering points so people can look at you and accept you because you still got the same accepted wound present. You still got that same wound going on in there. That point of that no self, that void, that point to where death acts when you actually are in the space and you know you're there. It's like you daydreaming. It's like you awake, like, nigga, I'm present in this space. Nothing that you created based on emotional distress can even live in that space. Every emotional mask, filter, when you go into this depths of the shadow, nothing that you had, any of your masks, any of your identities, any of those things that you were using to psych yourself out does not exist in that space. The feeling that you're gonna feel in that space of that no self, when you're at that point where you don't know where nothing is anymore, the shit that you're gonna feel in that space is every single one of those emotions. You're feeling all of the emotion in that space. You're feeling every emotion come to you at once. That's your shadows. Every shadow that it's time to integrate with comes into you into that space. You think it's one? No, it's multiple shadows, the legion of your shadows. Every identity that you've ever created, every avenue that you've ever went down, everything that you have never talked about, dealt with yourself, that's what goes into that space. That's what's going to come into that space. And when it comes into the physical world, that's what's really going to fuck you up. When it comes into the physical world, because it's not going to look like what it looked like in that space. And that's where a lot of us get, that's where you get that monstrous aspect of trying to, but I don't want to, okay. You've lined it up. The most devious of your behaviors, you going to hide behind the white man. The most devious of your behaviors, you'll hide behind the white man. The most recent injustice motherfuckers want to hide behind right now is the Asian hate bill. I was on YouTube the other day, and one of those little ads came up about Asian hate. And I'm listening to everything that they're saying in this little commercial, and it sounds just like what the civil rights leaders was talking about back in the 60s. Same shit. Same emotional taglines. But you're still looking at it as, ooh, I'm black, so they need to deal with our injustices first. They showed you right there in front of you every time you're looking at it. The false sense of an identity, not going deeper into self. because because if you sat there and read that, okay, the brown man, the red man, the yellow man, the brown man, the red man, and the white man, these other aspects that we created those aspects, or the Mexican, Latino, whatever you want to call it, the Asian, the Indian, and the white man, you created those aspects in the color, in that spectrum. They're all going to say the same shit. They all, every time, I remember every time talking to fucking white people and talking about fucking slavery, and I knew this white dude, he was like, yeah, man, I was a slave too because of the Irish shit. And I would just be like, nah, it ain't the same thing. But like, yeah. And he would tell me the same exact story, and I would get upset, I would be bothered and all this shit. But then I really had to realize with myself, and I'm sitting there like, wait. This is based on me not accepting exactly. I gotta be responsible for my behavior. If I use this as my catalyst for everything that I do or everything that I'm gonna go into and I'm gonna act with, then it has to stay present. It must stay present. That thought must be present. When you study the aspects of the correspondence of your truths, that must stay present in order for me to exist in that identity. So as long as that exists, I exist. I'm the protagonist to its antagonist, and I'm the protagonist to that. I'm a protagonist to that antagonist, and to me on that end of the spectrum, they're the protagonist and I'm the antagonist. And we just battling these points back and forth, keeping that shit charged. What they giving you now? You got niggas on, you got old rednecks on TikTok and talking about, yeah, they're giving you everything that you want to hear. It sounds really nice. The white dude, he sounded very strong with the points, made some points. He was like, but if I can say that I don't understand white people, understand I never owned slaves. But if I keep holding on to the narratives and keep receiving from the narratives of what came before me with slavery, then I'm just as bad as them. They gonna coach you into this understanding point so you stay into the space. That's the same exact conversation you have with your homegirl, and you know your homegirl is a reflection of all of the toxic aspects of yourself at a point in time that you now dealt with, and now you irritated as hell because they don't want to do it. Same damn conversation, same aspect, same sense of entitlement, same avoidance. That same conversation, you mad at every nigga that come into your life and say some shit to you that you don't like, but you hearing it through the trauma of your father. Nigga tried to teach you how to budget, and hey, yo, I can show you how to make a budget. I can show you how to make money from home. I can show you how to do this. But now you looking at that, the moment that you get upset because you don't understand it, this nigga, oh my God. The funniest thing about that with Twinkies never tasting the same, all bullshit aside, I bought the little twin pack of Twinkies the other day. Them shits taste horrible. Yes, when we're talking about these aspects, we can make up this entire philosophy and internalize it and philosophize. But if we're not applying to the internal depths of the uncomfortable aspect, when we're staying in these spaces talking about that person doing this and they doing this and they doing that, you're acknowledging that you like it because you know how to react to it. You know exactly how to react to it because they know exactly how to react. They only know how to react to it or make you react to it, once again, because it's projecting from you. That's how you know how to react to it. The most you're going to do is march. You're going to start another Black Panther party. You're going to start another Black Panther party. But when are you going to take that Black Panther party to the next level and actually make it an LLC or a fucking security firm? If you really want to do something, when you going to make it a security firm? When are you going to make it so motherfuckers are actually investing and it becomes a security firm? When are you going to take it to the next level? You're not. Because if you do that, you show yourself like, nigga, wait, we can do it. You like that comfort. Remember, we outside of good and bad. You're looking at the comforts of the positive, whether it serves you or not, or the negatives, whether it serves you or not. But what's that internal aspect? You want to go the same reason you want to go march in the fucking, you want to go to the fucking arm, you want to go into do all that shit is because of something that you wish that your father did. If I do this, I can prove the acceptance, and it's underlining acceptance. If I can prove that I can stand up for something, the way that that conversation when my father said I would never amount to nothing will no longer make sense. No, you're not closing it off. You're treating it like a job. You're treating it like a job for some benefits. You're treating it like a scratch off. You're treating it for some damn benefits. I got me some benefits off that right there. If I keep them in that mentality, I'll be good. Oh, sure, I'm gonna hit the point. Go back, play. All right. You can't keep that. I'm gonna do just enough so I can say that I'm doing something. That's you maintaining an identity. That's you maintaining the behavior. That's you not dealing with it truly. You want to be, I talked about it on Thursday when I talked about broccoli and celibacy. You want to do these aspects. Yep. You wouldn't know what to do. It's not, and now we're getting into this point of it isn't about not knowing what to do. It's simply that there's nothing to do. There's nothing. There's nothing. What is your goal is not to come back here. So why would I do things to come back here? At most, if I get to a point, you got to take it to like removing all acceptance. You got to remove, like you're removing all expectancy. You're not looking for, your internal work is not based in our internal work ultimately is not based in looking for a result. You're not looking for a result. When we look outside of ourselves for a result, like, ooh, when you look outside of yourself, when you're basing yourself on the external as a result, for a result, if the result don't pop up the way that you want it to make you feel good, then you'll stop doing it. That's the job aspect. When you start doing your internal work, you're allowing everything to shut away that every stopping point is being knocked out. Use an example. The earlier parts of my shadow, the earlier parts of my awakening and my awareness. The earlier parts of my awareness. Like most people, like, okay, cool, I got some information about myself. It was still trying to hold on to exactly into that space. It was based on trying to control my emotions. So I will only get information, or I would only say things, or I will only move or do things based on that, say that to keep my behavior, ultimately the unconsciousness of my behavior or the control of my emotions. So if I was always angry when I was little, always angry, built up a lot of anger, you build up a lot of anger, you build up a lot of doubt, the insecurities, the grief, these lower base, you build up a lot of fears. So if you build up around survival, a lot of fears, that means everything that you're going to read is going to be able to maintain the reason why you have that fear or the reason why you scared. So you're still trying to control the emotion instead of allowing the emotion to fully take root. So it can actually start this. So it can actually start expelling, and you actually can start doing the internal work of it. So you said I can look there like I don't want to know. Like you can like use an example like for most black people be like, I ain't going to therapy. You can intellectualize every reason why you do not want to go to therapy. But the ultimate aspect of why you don't want to go to therapy is because you do not want to address the emotional you do not want to allow the emotions to be brought to the surface to deal with to shift the behavior. So you will avoid therapy. You will intellectualize the aspects of, yeah, you see the Western philosophy or the Western psychology, all they want to do is give you drugs. All they want to do is give you this, hit you with some surface shit. It's only a reflection of you. You only want to go to the surface with some shit. It only can go as deep as you go into yourself. So when we go into our internal work and you go into this internal healing, especially if you set up a shadow wave consultation with me and we have that conversation and we're breaking some shit down, everything's going to come. We're bringing everything to the damn surface. I'm going to ask you about your mother. I'm going to ask you about your I'm going to ask you your story. I'm going to let you lead. Uh-huh. You got to, but the whole key to that, you got to make that space for yourself. You got to come into that space with yourself of like, you know what? It's time for, I really got to deal with that aspect of myself. That internal work, taking it away from that job point is I'm not looking for anything to come into my space. I'm no longer looking for things to come into my space to maintain a behavior. I'm making a decision that when I go into this space, what am I about to learn about myself? What am I learning about myself? What am I about to be open to myself with? You're everything that you're doing, I'm going to give you that build as a job. And the live I did on Wednesday, it's on the channel now. The live I did on Wednesday, as an example, I talked about looking where I was at within that space. This time last year, I was in the middle of, I did my 30-day fast and detox. This time this year, I'm in the gym. I'm doing my gym alchemy. That means I got a set of intentions, manifestations, mantras. I got shit programmed. So when I go to the gym while I'm doing my workouts, it's not just based in the sense of physical, it's based in the emotional aspect. Seeing myself do the workout, not stop, all of that, doing that work, building with that before I get into start doing the day. This time last year, I was in the middle of, I did my first 30-day fast. Did a 30-day fast. So much shit came to the surface, all crazy shit. The year before that, I was doing a detox and I did a 60-day fast. I did a 40-day fast. The year before that, I was homeless. The key of me feeling these emotions that were coming up over and over and over again is understanding accepting the pattern. The pattern was release. The pattern was it was time to detox. It's time to release. See, when I went homeless, I was still, even though I just came into, I was awake and I was very proud of my awakeness and the identity that I had. I wasn't letting go or allowing things to dissipate or allowing myself to allow my emotions to rise to the surface. So everything that came into that space had to be removed. So I was homeless. 2 months, homeless, no place to stay, breaking into built, all types of shit. Did everything based in the survival within that space. That 60 day, it was 60. I was homeless for 2 months. That 60 days was the best 60 days of my fucking life because it changed my entire perspective of everything that I ever was holding on to. Because before that, in a point in time, I would try to blame it. In the beginning of it, I was trying to blame everybody. I didn't feel this need to blame anybody anymore. It was on me. I stopped blaming everybody I let myself down to this point. From that point, the next year came into that space. The same thing I should have did in the beginning. I beat myself up and let go of that thought. I should have did this 3 years ago. I wasn't ready for it. Started working on the relationship with my mother, understanding the relationship with my mother and my peoples, and going through those aspects. Got a job, came through that aspect. I finally understood why the fuck all of my jobs lasted 5 years. Every job that I ever had was for 5 years. When I got to like the 4th and 5th year, and I'm sitting there holding keys in a managing position and having authority, and I'm just going through mental motions, it was letting me know that shit wasn't for me anymore. So now I'm in a space right now where the COVID shit hit in 2000. Yeah, COVID shit hit last year. Before that, you can go back and look at the earlier videos on this channel right now. All the earlier videos that I was doing were all in front of my job before I had to go into work. I did 2 things in that space. And one thing I was very conscious of, and the other thing I was unconscious of, but it made sense. I would get to my job because I had to hop on the bus or I had to walk to work. So I'd be at work like an hour, 2 hours before 2-3 hours before anybody get there. I'm sitting there in that space. I was already writing up things and writing up my thoughts and putting them out. Sitting in that space. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go live. Did my first live. I was jittery as fuck, looking all around and all that damn shit. But I did my first little live. My first little live was like, you were a god. The second live, I did another live the next time, and I kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Fast forward to now. It wasn't a job. I wasn't looking for a result. I was in that space. I was learning not to care. The more that I learned not to care, the more I came into the aspects of the gnosis or understanding to have compassion. So my emotions didn't lead what I spoke. So when I spoke, whatever I spoke came from the path of my heart. Knocked some shit down. The more and more I was going into that space, the more and more I went into that space with myself, the more and more things shifted and changed. I was letting go of I already had, the job was there. But I wasn't, the more and more I started looking at my job and understanding what my job was for, is basically all that shit's information. So use the aspect of this. You want to manifest this new life for yourself. You got to let go. You got to assess the old life first. You got to assess the old life. Your first space is your opportunity. Your first space is your space is your first opportunity. So how did that space come into creation? Your first house, second house, your living arrangements, wherever you at, how did that come into existence? Until you're able to define how that came into existence, how can you visualize what you want to come into existence? if I'm not learning how all of my other shit, if I'm not looking at my space and how this came into existence and what I did to get this space, then how can I set new intentions and visualize what I want new to come into my space? How can I get the new shit because all that's going to happen, and I talked about that Thursday, that unhealed manifestation, my vicarious field, living through my vicarious trauma, I'm only going to be able to get it based through my traumas. And the way I've been using my traumas. I've told that way back, we don't get deep into it now. The aspects of using something as simple as the mental state of my mother from when I was like going back into these experiences. My mother stole from me when I was like 11 years old. She stole like $20 from my money I had sitting on the couch, and then she lied to me about it. I didn't know how deep that was in my mind until when I went forward and I was like, jobs, everything that I was doing was based upon that narrative. I felt like somebody owed me something because they took something from me. All because what was nurtured, that guidance, that wisdom, my mother did exactly what she was supposed to do. That forgiveness, that acceptance, accepting what my mother did, forgiving my mother for what she did. My mother, if she didn't take that money, I wouldn't have learned the damn lesson. It was a part of my contract. Accept it. Now I accepted it. Now it's not a task or a job that I'm looking at to try to keep myself going in that behavior. So now I don't have to now I'm not stuck in this state of projecting that on the people or into people's lives to try to keep me behaving the same exact way. My distrust for myself, I project onto others. My lack of understanding of myself is what I project on the others. You don't understand me. You don't love me. You don't care about me. Because what was my first example or experience was not even truly love. If it came from, especially when it comes from a sexual trauma and you got some attention from a sexual trauma in that space, that's how you learned how to operate based on attention. So if you don't get attention based on that narrative, and then you think about going forward and you're listening to everybody else around you, and they have this aspect they loved us based on, think about the narrative. You can't say nothing to him because he gave us this and he's doing all this for us. So that became your narrative. So now that's the way you view men, unconsciously and consciously. That's the way you view men. That's the way you view women in your life, as a source of income, as a source of income, as a source to feed your emotions. So they're that source to give you whatever you need inside of that space. So now they got to take the role of, if they're the source of you acting out in your emotions in the lower aspects of yourself, they would have to naturally become what? A narcissist. They would naturally be a narcissistic type. But who had the first narcissistic traits ever in your life? Who had the first traits of shame ever in your life? Whoever had the first marker, where were the first markers that were placed in your life? 1 second. It sounds cute. It sounds good. It sounds excellent to yell out your mouth. We need to heal generational wealth. Generational wealth is just the byproduct of your emotional literacy. Generational wealth is no more than the byproduct of your emotional literacy. We need to eat healthy and become healthy. Your health is nothing but a byproduct of your emotional literacy, the manifestation of your emotions. So to change the outside narrative of yourself really doesn't do anything. To say you eat broccoli every day is really not going to do anything. It's going to change your chemical composition. But if you didn't define the emotional markers and aspects before you did it, or while you're doing it, going through the detox, going through the fast, going through your plant-based, going through the journey, then you're not paying attention to the pattern that you're now set. The same pattern that you had when you was out there running the streets and addicted to some other shit and urges in the physical sense is the same way you treating that. The same way you're going to tap in. Ooh, I've been celibate for all these years. I've been practicing semen retention. What was your intention behind your celibacy and your semen? You want to retain your semen and going celibate. What was your intention behind it? What was your intention behind it? Oh, you wanted, because I'm tired of niggas coming into my life and I'm tired of bitches coming into my life using up all my energy. Okay. The conception of your truth, that has to remain in order for you to keep doing that. The longer that you hold on to that, the longer that they niggas gonna be in your inbox. The longer the bitch is gonna be in your inbox, the longer they gonna be there, because they need to be there for you to keep doing what you're doing. Because you ain't learned the key to it. When I teach meditation, do guided meditation, one of the things about meditation is you're going from learning how to sit there and still yourself to being in a meditative state at all times. Meditation is the ultimate aspect of you. Meditation is one of those tools that's the ultimate key to you being ultimately vulnerable and open to the space. So the next level of your meditation would be you are always in a meditative state. So once you now mastered being in a meditative state, now you understand why when you're inside of your space, like if I look at this into my entire space inside the living room, everything is in tune with, I'm in tune with everything inside of this space. I am aware of everything inside of this space. All of this shit speaks to me. So when I look at it, I see shit differently. So now the next level after my meditation, now when I go to sleep, it's automatic. Now I'm automatically out of my body at any given time. So the next level to my meditation, now that I've mastered and I've dealt with the things that I needed to remove, now that I'm in a meditative state about my environment, would now be, ooh, let me learn how to scry. Now I'm learning how to scry now. This is at that point in time. Now I know how to scry things. Scrying is the ability to look at something and see the energy and see the symbols within it. So now, me being that occult psychologist, me being the therapist, now when I read energy, how would I learn? And this is how you learn how to use your tools until you don't need them anymore. Now when I look at, okay, cool. Now when I look at somebody, even through the screen, and read the energy through the screen, now I'm scrying and seeing what I need to say next. All I am is the open vessel for, now I'm not, all I am is the open vessel for that space, for the things to come through me so you can now see them. That's all you do. That's all I'm doing as a healer. I'm just showing you how to do this. I'm just helping you remove the blockages and aiding you in the guidance of removing those blockages so you can start taking your shit to the next level. So you don't get stuck in the other identities. Been there before, done that before. Instead of you getting stuck on a motherfucker telling you some shit like, yeah, and getting stuck in the same exact narratives over and over and over again. I haven't faced anything of a racist aspect in the last 2-3 fucking years. Not saying that I'm not aware that it's not happening on the TV screen and in that out there in the movie screen, but that's not part of my movie. Somebody that's stuck in a state of projection, they will always come to me and be like, how can you not do this? And our people is out here. My people aren't struggling. My people aren't struggling. My people are not struggling. My people are not hurting. Everybody around me, everybody that I come in contact with that resonates with me or is coming into the space, however the spirit led them into the space, they're ready for that next level because that's where my intention sits. I understand that there's no going back. I know there's no going back. I know that there's nothing behind me. Anything that I'm supposed to be keying into is coming into my space. It's going to come there anyway. I deal with it as it comes into my space. I'm no longer going to be like, oh my God, that's too bad. I got to go run back. There's nothing to run back to. Since that's the basis of my intention, going through the healing process, doing my shadow work, doing my internal work, what comes into my space naturally is of that frequency, is naturally in that space. They ready to do that work. They're ready to kill some shit. They're ready to move forward. Because that's the standard that I set for myself internally. I'm ready to move forward. That's the mantra that I set for myself internally. That's where my intentions are set. So everything that I'm going to do, everything that I'm going to say, everything that I act on is coming to me when I get that download, when I get that channel, when I get that information. It's always based on that narrative. It's always going to be based on something that's going to challenge something. You know when it's truly of your intentions, because I talked about intentions before, your intentions are always going to challenge you. If it's not challenging you to step outside of a zone of comfort, or that ring or that cipher of comfort, it's an emotional tag or that emotional attachment that's coming to the surface. A lot of us move through our spaces based on the emotional attachments, what we're still attached to. So when that emotional trigger comes up, when old buddy does you dirty, when old girl betrays you or cheats on you or does something that you don't like, that's the emotional trigger. Because in reality, if I sit here and say I can't trust or I don't trust you anymore, I don't believe you. I don't trust in you, or I don't believe you. If I say that to your face, if I say that to you, I don't trust you, I don't believe in you, I can't be here anymore, all these things, what keeps me there? What keeps me there? Take away the kids. Take away all the external shit. Look internally. You still trying to prove something to your mother. Your mother, you still living. It's constant destruction. Everything that comes into my space is going to be constantly destroyed to be taught to its true aspect of itself. So I'm looking back, if I remove all of those aspects and I go look back at why I try to keep relationships lasting for so long, it was because I was trying to prove to my mother or prove to my pops that I could do it. I had an acceptance wound. That wound is what I was trying to live in. They accepted me based into this wound. That's why you'll lead with your wound first. I had a horrible life. And I remember when this happened to me when I was 3. And I remember when this happened to me when I was this. All right, cool. I'm past that point. I remember all of my lives when I was around here. I remember going back further. I remember all of my lives of going through all of my shifts. I remember going through my shiftings. I remember going through my shape-shifting phases. I remember going through my werewolf phases. I remember going through my dragon phases. I remember going through my bird phase. I remember going through all of my animalistic phases of the behaviors. So when I came into this life, and when I came into this cycle of my life, everything that came into my space, it was based on those aspects of those behaviors. Everything that I was looking at, everything that you're looking at, you're attracted to it for a reason because it's a part of yourself. Like me, I watched every episode of Teen Wolf when that shit first came the fuck out. Because, nigga, I was there. I was in that. I remember, you ever seen Teen Wolf? Teen Wolf it was on MTV for a little bit. I remember when they first went to Mexico in Teen Wolf. If you haven't seen it, there's a season when they go to Mexico and they go see the shapeshifter or the Jaguars. And I was like, I was so intensely intrigued by watching this that when I would go to sleep, I would like go what I was thinking. I was looking at it on TV, and it was because of what I watched. It was actually I was remembering and recalling aspects of my life. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting like, oh my. You're bringing that shit into your space. You're learning these aspects of yourself. Your entire field of your entire auric field. You being afraid of your power, you being afraid of this energy, releasing this into your space is because you keep thinking that you always go to the worst case scenario of what the first thing that you're about to destroy on some that basic human shit. The human narrative, the things that keep your identity intact. If I do this, and then this is how you know you're maintaining an identity. You 97 posts in, you're a witch, okay? Or 97 posts in, you're a hotep, and you hotep and you Kemetic science, or you're a Moor. It's an identity. The same way that you created the identity of when you were in kindergarten and you got picked on because you got peed on and you held on to that memory. I never want to be seen that way. So now when I'm in the 8th grade, I created a whole nother identity for myself. You created that whole identity for yourself is the same way that you became the hotep, the same reason you became a Kemite. I'm Kemetic. I'm a Power Ranger Hebrew Israelite. I'm a Hebrew Israelite. You still trying to belong to something external to avoid dealing with your own legion of yourself. That puts you in the have to. That puts you in that job. That puts you that identity shit keeps you in the job aspect. Because you're gonna keep doing it until you get the result that you want. You don't get the result that you want, what you gonna do? You don't quit it. You ain't. But let's change your perspective. If I go into that space and I'm like, what am I about to learn about myself? I have to allow I have to allow my emotions to come up into this space. This nigga might be the nigga that's gonna piss me off. I'm gonna let him piss me off. I gotta learn this. Shorty gonna be the one that's gonna tell me no. I gotta accept it and understand why she's telling me no. What about myself? I gotta look at it. I gotta look at it beyond. I gotta take the filter away. I gotta let the veil fall away so I can see it for what it is. Once you start doing that aspect and you start understanding how mental everything's being housed by your mental capacity anyway. We talked about that last week's class with that this aspect of your false mind or your false mind, the perceptions, the pride, the identities. That's all your false mind. Your false mind, the core of your false mind, that little 10%, the core of your false mind is that 10% that's irradiated from your traumatic experiences, the traumas, the symbols, the repetition of those, and you need all of that to exist within that space. That's why that's why I always talk about, look at your environment. Look at your environment. Listen to your conversations. If you're always around individuals that every time they're talking to you, it's always talking about somebody else. Mm-hmm. They always talking about somebody else. It's always gossip. It's never nothing. And you can trick yourself, because I remember tricking myself, because this is how you start understanding your worth. I remember tricking my damn self, and like I would have those whole hour and 5-hour conversations around people, and they didn't talk about everybody else under the sun. But then towards the end of it, I noticed a pattern. Towards the end of it, or at the beginning of it, or somewhere in there, they would say something that would keep me in the space that I needed to hear. But here was the key about me getting what I needed to hear from that space. The key is what I was just told. It doesn't matter what I'm told. It's only what I'm applying to. That's what keeps that space living. That thought form there is what I'm applying to. So if I listen to motherfuckers talking about other people the entire fucking time, but then they tell me some shit about going to school or advancing my career in some way or doing something to that narrative that's actually constructive, what's going to take root first? Because the reason that that space was built was based on doubt. Everybody in that space got avoidance issues. Everybody in that space got some neglect wounds, some daddy issues, mom issues, whatever. So that's why I was attracted to that space, trying to be accepted. So now I got that little bit of information, but now that positive ion inside that one negative ion inside of that space, I must now learn how to charge. That's that secret. I can take anything from everywhere and use it as I need to use it. Once I've learned the science behind it with myself and I now apply it, there's no need for that anymore. So now it exposes it as an attachment. Because now I notice that every time I go over there and talk to these people, I'm tired as shit. I'm either angry as fuck. I'm not in the right. My energy's fucked up. But when I started doing it different, when I started taking what I needed to take from there, I noticed that I didn't need to go there as much. I was giving myself building on the other end. Because I can keep going into this. I can keep going into this space, learning the things that are coming into this space until I learned that it was coming straight to me. Before I knew it, as I started assessing these wounds, going down this timeline, mother, father, sister, brother, events that happened, the experiences, all of that shit that happened, I was more in my middle point. The more that I could concentrate on being in my now. Yes. That shit got to shed. So now I'm sitting in this space like, oh shit, I'm in a, oh shit, this shit different now. I'm in my middle point. I'm in the neutral zone. I'm in the land of neutrality. I did the podcast episode. I'm in the land of neutrality. Here's the trick. When we're assessing our auric field and we're assessing ourselves. When I'm sitting in this space right here of this auric field, my auric thought, the land of neutrality, that's not peace. That's not love. That's not peace. That's not peace. That's purgatory. You'll know that you're in this space of purgatory because you're sitting in that space and you're like, because everything's going to trigger the shit out of you inside of this space. That's how you know that you're not at peace yet. As long as it's triggering you, you have not come into that full realm of peace with yourself yet. Still got some shedding to do. That's what purgatory is for. It's for you to assess your story. It's for you to look at your life. It's not for you to. Y'all remember, if you've seen American Gods, I remember when the ugly little white girl, she went in there and she was trying to change the story instead of seeing the story for what it was. Remember how she was trying to change the story instead of seeing it for what it was? That's what you're doing in that space. When you're assessing your traumas, when you're going through the reflections, you're going to start seeing how others identities that they've maintained with themselves in their space. You're like, wait, that's not really what it is for me in my life. That's not really what happened. So how long have I been doing this? You'll ask yourself the question, how long have you been really doing it? How long have you been taking in what you heard from somebody and feeding it through that same damn trauma wound of when your dad said some shit, your father figure that was in your life said some shit to you? Yeah, to stay safe in that company. Like, how long have I been doing this? You gotta ask yourself that real quick. How long have I really been doing this my entire time? You've been trying to make everything to keep you in that comfort of your perspective of the behavior. So you don't deal with what you need to deal with. So you don't walk into that darkness. You keep avoiding death. You can read every book about fucking death and understand death is the aspect of that transition. But until you've applied to the lessons based in that transition of what you need to transition through, you still scared of death. That's why every time they show you somebody die on TV, you, oh my God, somebody died. They keep killing us. They keep killing us off. But if I understand that my purpose and point, some motherfuckers can't go to the next level anyway. That's why you saw that whole mass of motherfuckers dying off in the COVID shit earlier on. That new level of energy destroyed what it needed to it removed what it needed to remove. Why did it bother you? Why did it upset you? You looking at the story, like when I open that up, like, are you, so when you looking at, say her name. Okay. You looking at, you screaming at the screen about Breonna Taylor, and I understand, in the understanding of the compassion, I understand that, it's something that you grieve over, but is it really what why are you connected to it? Let's think about your innocence of your inner child. The innocence lost of your inner child. The moment that the innocence of your inner child that you're now seeing in that space. Because that's how they connected to you. You've been told that's how they connected to you based on mind control. That's the programming. They can't put something in front of you that's not already there. You give it a emotional response. It's not about the win or the loss. It's not about the right or the wrong. You respond to it. You're on that frequency. You're in that space. Your time to assess something. When you look at things in that narrative, nigga, this shit's fun. That's how it's no longer a job. It's no longer a job for me. When I look at things and I hear certain things, it automatically goes to the highest aspect of something. It automatically goes to the upper room. It doesn't stay in the low. It doesn't stay where it's at. You can't assess trash in the damn dump. You can't go into a fucking landfill and be like, this shit's dirty. It's a landfill. What the fuck you think it was supposed to be? See it for what the fuck it is. You had a perception. Your perception got challenged. You had a perspective. Your perspective got challenged. You had some instincts. Your instincts got challenged. What are you about to do with those instincts? That instinct of that survival has to be challenged. If you want peace, you got to move your instincts into the space of peace. If you want that love, you got to move it you got to shift your instincts from the survival narrative of fear and move it into the aspects. You got to move your instincts into the neutral zone. You got to start. This is when if you watch Bobby Henney, was always talking about, you got to think on a higher level. That's moving your instincts from survival into the neutral zone. Your instinct of survival is now my instinct for survival is now in the neutral zone. That means my intuition is now in the higher or in the enlightenment aspect. So everything challenges me based in the enlightenment to stay open and stay alive. So anything that doesn't mean I'm not aware of what's down below in this space, in this example. I'm not aware of what's going on down here. That doesn't mean I'm not aware of it. It's just that if it comes into that, if I'm looking at it, it's gonna have to come up here. I got to bring it up here for assessment. So now if I'm bringing things up into this space, now this space has to become open. So now my path of my heart is now clear. I've made the decisions that I needed to make to move into the path to sit on my throne. So I now can sit there as my Baphomet self, in that Baphomet, my Lord Shiva aspect, and I'm just simply Buddha. I can just simply sit in my space, and I can now assess things from that space, build things into that space. So now that I'm in now that I'm in that sense of that balance. Yes, keep calm and carry on. Now that I'm in that sense of that balance, now when I'm sitting up here, So I don't, because remember, we're getting out of comfort and staying complacent. Now it's, what do I build while I'm up here? This is where I find my purpose. This is where I find my purpose. My purpose has no limits. Your true purpose has no limitations. It doesn't have restrictions. It doesn't have anything that's going to shut you down. As you're learning your purpose and you're unlocking into your purpose, Papa Lucifer, spiritual name came through. My spiritual names came through. Papa Lucifer Samdi, Godico Alchemist. This is now what I do. I have multiple streams to that space. Yeah. Yeah, you just sit back and watch it like a movie. You can just sit there and look at it and be like, oh, wow. That shit's crazy. That happened again? Yeah. That way, you have to, because the ultimate role is everything down here works for you. Everything down here works for you. You gave it a role, you gave it a task, you gave it a job. If I don't know my job, if I don't know my role, then how do I know what the fuck that nigga's role over there is? I don't know what his role is. I can't accept what it's about to do to me. I can't accept what it's doing in my space. So now I'm going to be sitting there irritated, upset, mad, insecure, jealous, feeling an injustice, trying to battle some shit, advocate for some shit that really don't mean nothing. Because a year later, it can happen again to something else. That's all you're seeing down here. Y'all remember when the civil rights movement came through and the aspects within the yeah. You sitting there upset, like why? Like after a while, like I remember after a while I was looking at myself like, yo, why am I really mad? Why am I really upset? It's because I haven't defined something. It's only based because I didn't define it yet. The only time I actually get mad, upset, that trigger comes up is just showing me that I have not defined that aspect of that charge yet. That cell, that program that is still there on that space. That's all that it means. Simplified it, synthesized it. That's what it means. Let me assess it. Let me now learn this. Let me go through the real process. I'm bringing it into the space of my higher to understand it now. Instead of me sitting down there being mad like, okay. You can't get mad because it's like getting upset because your baby father isn't shit or your baby mother ain't shit or your wife ain't shit. Okay. What did you do? Nah, they changed. They changed once we got together. See, when we got together, we got what you're telling yourself is once you got into a place of comfort, that place of comfort, what needed to happen was chaos needed to. Just when we look at these trauma bond relationships, I got the whole list right here. I'm gonna read them off now. La 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 la. Everybody. Let's go here. Let's go to the page. All right, cool. When we look at a trauma bond, friendship, relationship, even down to the job, anything can be based into a bond of trauma. We got to remove ourselves out of this aspect of this small scope of a trauma bond is simply a love interest. A trauma bond is anything based upon maintaining high, low, or that aspect of disrespect. So we look at the relationship. The relationship starts with an instant attraction, and there's this irresistible chemistry. There's this irresistible chemistry. What everything that they say or everything that they do sounds really, really good. Oh, that's gonna help me get my new lifestyle, get my new lifestyle together. Okay. Now what? In the truth of an aspect, that's why you looking into the relationship. And why the relationship? Because you got all of this information through that filter of that wound. That's why the chemistry was so irresistible. That's why the game was so tight. That's why they said all those things to you when you got really, really weak and all that shit. Or you let them into your life because they gave you this feeling of they fed that acceptance wound. They fed that rejection and that neglect wound. You have not defined what you have been neglecting yourself of. So you don't know what the fuck neglect even looks like. The only example that you ever had of looking back at your family, because you created that perspective of your own life, is you remember your mom and your dad, or your dad not being there, and then all you remember is what your mother said about your father to why he left. What your father said about your mother leaving, or your mother not being there, or them leaving away. That's all you remember. So that's all you carry forward. You still stuck back when you was 6 years old when your mother left. You still stuck back at 11 years old, 12 years old. That emotional development got stuck back there. You grew physically. You grew the reptilian mind, the false mind grew. The perceptions, the perspectives, the identities, they grew through that adolescent wounds. Because your inner child wounds become adolescent wounds. Your inner child wounds become the adolescent emotions. Your adolescent emotions become the adult identities. So if I have emotional wounds back from when I was 5, that means my adolescent emotions are always going to be based upon a 5-year-old. That means my adult identities are always going to be based upon that same 5-year-old. Or you want to double it up, say 10. That 5-year-old mentality. You bucking and kicking and stomping your feet and upset and poking your lip out and taking away toys and saying you can't get no pussy, you ain't getting no dick and all that dumb shit. You acting like a fucking 5-year-old. Why? You probably didn't heard it in your life a couple times. You need to grow the fuck up. You acting like a child. And then you get upset when someone says, I'm grown. You don't understand why I'm grown. Then what do you tell them when you're grown? You got a job. You done been to college. You got a house. You got a bank account. All you can use is external shit. You ain't using nothing internal. Because you're speaking through the trauma. You're speaking through the exact point of the trauma. You're projecting from your emotional catalyst is speaking through the exact point of the trauma. She tell you that you need to get your life together, try to get. What did you hear? All you heard was that same conversation. All you can go back to is that same conversation that you always heard your mom and dad was talking about arguing in the room. Or your mom and one of her boyfriends, or your mom and one of her girlfriends, or your dad and one of his girlfriends or boyfriends, whatever, or one of his homeboys or whatever. You just repeating the same conversation. You have kids. You telling your little girl around the same age that you were whenever the traumatic event or the experience happened to you, and now you're living through that event. You're only speaking through that wound because you're at that level. I tell my daughter everything. Do you really? I tell my son everything. Do you really? Do you really tell them everything? Or are you directing them through the same traumatic experiences based on you? You haven't dealt with it, so how can you teach them to deal with it? The same pressure, the same ley line that you came through is the same ley line that they came through. So this reflection of the same shit that you went through in an equivalent sense will be the same thing that they'll go through. You had a trauma when you were 12. I remember having my traumas when I was 12 and 13, and babysitter doing the thing with me. And I remember coming into the space, talking to my nieces and nephews, and around that same space, I remember I'm telling them this, and then they give it to you on the TV show, and you got the dad big up in his son because he getting some pussy, but then he looking at his daughter and being like, you can't do that. Because it's hard to look at in real life. Everything outside of you is a tool. Everything. Instead of you trying to look at it as a conspiracy theory or an agenda, everything outside of you is the fucking tool. Everybody like, oh my God, Bill Cosby's out of jail and all this shit. He tried to put pro-black on TV and all this shit. Shit went mainstream. Why you're looking for the result. So that's how you look at, this is another example of how you look at it like it's work. You want the result to be that you can be Africa Bambaataa or KRS-One and be a rapper again, and rappers talking about consciousness and shit, and they got conscious shit on TV, and they got a whole block on Netflix for black people, or you got whole black people television shows. Why? What next? It's good. It's not good or bad. How are you going to use it? They taking it out of schools to teach our kids about slavery and all of this shit. Okay. You already came to the point with you said you came to the point where you were like, we weren't slaves. So why would you want them to teach that same shit to your kid? You want them to have the same behavioral and emotional taglines that you have. So when they get upset, y'all can sit there in that space where they're still 12, they're still 13, and you can talk to them like they're your best friend, and y'all both 12 and 13. Y'all 14 and 15 years old together. You want them to relive the same shit you went through because you ain't dealt with it. So you can feel close, so you can feel connected. All you're doing is building another fucking attachment. All you're doing is setting it up to keep happening. It's time to shift. It's time to shift out of that. It's time to bring that shit to the table. Earlier on in lectures, I remember always talking about it's time to get really, really uncomfortable. So like today, this whole week, I was like, okay, cool. It's time to get back into that uncomfortable mode. These are those conversations that you really need to have. You need to have that space. So like my whole goal, one of my priorities, primary in my purposes was to make that space available because it's not available. It's very little spaces where it's actually available, where it's actually brought into the space. It's went through, and remember that file share, all that information comes through. Nobody picked up on it. They let it keep falling down. I was just, I'm gonna pick it up. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna use it. Let's do it. That's all you're doing. That's all you're shifting out of that old paradigm. You're shifting out of trying to belong to some shit outside of you. You're shifting away from that shit. We get stuck on this definition of being defined by, oh, that nigga got on this and he got beard, he got dreads, he got locks, she got this. That means they must be this. All right, cool. That's cool. Bet. All right. If that's what you use as the aspect, the external or a surface, but then you go get a reading from that motherfucker and they had a bad day and now they putting all that shit onto you and now they feeding from you. It's the same way that when you go to that same thought that you had about what therapists do based on treatment is the same way that you kept going into that space. Exactly. And then you like, ooh. So now since you, and in maintaining the same behavior, Now you'll use the label. See, there's too many fucking vampires around here. There's too many fake motherfuckers. If you can see it and you're reacting to it and you're triggered by it, it's always gonna go back to you. It's always gonna go back to you. How were they able to suck my energy from me? If I said that I'm so in my balance, or I'm so balanced and I'm so in my space, how did they get the in it? Oh my God. Because there's something within you that you got to assess. That's what they're there for. They're there for that purpose. You want to look at them like they sinister and bad, you still stuck in bad. You still stuck in bad and good. You ain't as far ahead as you thought you were. You ain't at the point that you said you were. That's all that shows you now. Uh-huh. Your thoughts, your thoughts and your actions. Your thoughts control your emotions. Your thoughts control your emotions. Your emotions drive your behaviors. Your behaviors form your habits. Your habits create them patterns. You'll know when you've been stuck in a lower emotional pattern, because the moment that you get challenged by something that's in that space that's not using emotion, not driven by emotion, you don't know how to act to it. You'll call that nigga emotionless as hell. Motherfuckers still call me emotionless as fuck. No, not. I just have the balance in I understand. I have a very high emotional intelligence, and I'm humble that here's the true aspect of that. The more that you understand it, and you know you don't know anything, but you come into this gnosis of just simply knowing and having that intelligence. Intelligence is just simply wanting to know, wanting to be open, wanting to be vulnerable, wanting to learn. That's your genius. So now that you come into that space, now you're really looking like that's where humility is found. Humility is found through your genius and your intelligence anyway. The fact that someone can bring something to me and I don't look at it as trying to find myself in it, and I can give a perception or a perspective that expands and makes me even think, that's how I know that's how I know it's real. That's how I know it's true shit. It forces me to even sit back and think. It forces me to apply it. It puts me in a position to apply it. I'm not looking at it you don't looking at it based on a label like, well, if you talking about doing all that shit, why you ain't doing this, and that? Why you? Because you looking for some external shit. Because that same person that'll look at you and talk about, okay, cool, you doing this, and this, they looking at you. They're either way on either. That's what we said. Whether they looking at you from that the positive aspect or the negative aspect. Either way, they want you to stay in that space so they can keep feeding from you. It's like every time something comes up on the fucking news, and then everybody want to gravitate and use that information and try to give their own perspective of it. And it's like, okay, cool. Some of the shit you can listen to and get some information from it. Other times it's like, why are y'all even talking about this? Why are y'all even using that as it? Yeah. You sitting there holding your, there's no one holding you back but your own thoughts and your own undefined thoughts and your own undealt with emotions. That's the only thing that can hold you the fuck back. Over the last couple of months, one of the examples of me over the last couple of months, when I say I'm going to do something, 9 times out of 10, I will go do it. I don't care how big or how small that it is, I will go do it. If I'm not able to do, and I'm not looking for a certain a result, it can just be simple like, ooh, I want to do, use an example. Lost the whole train. Just use an example. It's not about you trying to, ooh, I'm going to go buy, no. It might just be simply you need to go get that information for a point in time. That's what you're shifting into. You let go of all that. You start that old paradigm shit, debating back and forth and yelling and argue. I ain't got time to argue. Why? There's no use. There's no reason for me to debate anything. Because you can make your shit true, I can make my shit true, and then we at a stalemate. The only thing that's gonna make somebody tip either side is gonna be the emotional aspect. So if I can say, so now it boils down to the external narrative of if I can say 962 things about the white man and why, and this person only can say will say the same amount of things, but he has something extra. Yeah, they talking about the white man is our enemy and da 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 da. I ain't got no enemies within me, so I ain't got no enemies without me. I ain't got no enemies out there in the world because I ain't got no enemies within me. If a nigga's jealous, they projecting. If a nigga, you get to that point with yourself. If a nigga's jealous, they're projecting. If a nigga is insecure, they're projecting. If somebody's saying something to me, they're projecting. And that's being on. That's on. You only can do that when you're being honest with yourself. You only do that when you're being honest with yourself. Because it's all going to be based on what you say after that. You're right. Mm-hmm. You're correct. Yeah. I appreciate your input. I will keep that. I will keep that on file. Thank you. Ownership. I will keep that application on file. I ain't holding anything. You're moving away from holding all this shit into yourself, and why? Because all you're doing is hurt. All you're doing is basically fucking up your own goddamn light. You upset because you fucking up your own goddamn light. You out here mad because what you mad at? Maybe it's telling you it's time to move forward. That job got you fucked up my job got me fucked up. What are you doing at your job? What's the reflection of your job? You got comfortable. The only time something fuck you up at your job is when you got comfortable. Every time something happened at my job. Mm-hmm. The only time shit was going bad at my jobs or in relationships when I got complacent. Only time. You out there, but nah, man, they supposed to pay me some more money because of this and that and that and that. They supposed to pay me more. They ain't supposed to do anything for you. They ain't supposed to do anything for you. What were you doing before that job? What were you doing before that relationship? I don't listen to the excuse anymore with myself. Like, mom would be like, yo, but you got to do this. No, I don't do that shit no more. I didn't remove myself from that aspect of thought in life for like a while now. Like, no one can come and tell me like, yo, like you can't do this, this, and this. No, it don't exist for me. If this your first time coming in, I've been doing this for like ever since 2019 and getting deeper and deeper and deeper as I was shedding more therapy for myself. I have a whole podcast that I do every Tuesday. Said there will not be a podcast next Tuesday, but I do a podcast episode that I drop every Tuesday. Everything from the music to the voiceovers to the voice effects to the mixing. I do all of that shit, and I've never ever went to one music theory class or nothing of that narrative. Nothing. But I'll sit here and I'm in that space of ultimate creativity. So like the excuse is the emotional aspect of me was always based on me trying to be accepted. That physical aspect. This isn't gonna make you get stuck in those narratives like, oh, this ain't gonna make me no money, and this ain't gonna do this, and they ain't gonna do that. All right, cool. If I build based on money for the podcast, you actually can go on It's like 3 joints down on my page. I actually have a link to where I upload a snippet of the podcast, and it's actually like all the links are in there. It's like every link: iTunes, Breaker, Podbean, Pod Addict, Google Podcast, the God Out Podcast. Yeah. But your ultimate goal in your purpose is you can say all of those things that you want. Yeah, it's on Spotify. You can say all of these things that you want for yourself. You can say all of that shit. It's like, yeah, you say whatever the fuck you want. No problem. You can say whatever the fuck you want, but until you actually start doing your internal work, none of that shit's really gonna fucking matter. Because you'll be able to tell what you're able to tell now as you're looking at the stream of the conscious community is you're always being sold something. When you're really doing your internal work, there's not this feeling of being sold something. You are in that space, it forces you to come back to yourself, and you're like, how do I go forward? And if that individual is in that space to build into that, they'll either have something to further lead you to you. They won't lead you away from yourself. I'm not going to be here to lead you away from yourself. Everything from the reading, when I do readings or mini consultations, or I do the consultation, the shadow work consultation, and then we get deeper into the shadow work therapy for the inner child healing, the adolescent healing, and the levels of healing. All of that's built. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. It's great. It's lit. Once you start letting go of all of that shit and allowing and even when we say the letting go aspect, when you start really understanding that the more I start learning about myself, the more shit naturally sheds away. It's more like shedding. So now you advance from I need to let go of this and I need to let go of this. You stop treating it. We're getting out of that space, treating it like a job, and you treating it like what it is. You are shedding. You must shed. You must go into that dark. You must go through your death. You must come into that light with yourself. You can fight it all day. Fight the transitions all day if you want to. Go ahead. Go ahead and fight it. You'll be just like one of them 60-year-old niggas sitting on the corner arguing back and forth with some nigga wearing a hat and a headdress and another nigga wearing a whole Sub-Zero outfit. You out there mad arguing with motherfuckers. Why? What? There ain't no need to argue. Why? We sitting here right now. No conflict. No conflict. Looking into yourself. Learning about yourself. That's all that key is. Learning about yourself. How am I going to advance? What am I learning about myself today? If I set that thought process in my mind, everything's going to change. Everything. I'm at peace. I'm truly at peace. I'm truly at peace. August 16, 2020, I did the marriage to myself. The balance of my masculine and my feminine brought them motherfuckers together. And been in that, I've been good. It's been great. I don't have to think about what's going to make me happy. I'm happy. I don't got to think about what's going to make me feel joy. I'm in joy. I'm already there. So now I radiated that space. So everything comes in my space makes me further happy. So if someone comes into my space and they want to have a conversation, that conversation is ultimately going to bring me joy because it's giving me a chance to ultimately learn myself, to teaching points, learning points, and moving forward. If it's not based on that, if once I've that came into my space and it's done what it needed to do, now it can no longer come into my space. The door is removed and it can't come back. That leads into the aspect of talking about the conversation I had with my mother earlier today. And she was like, don't cut your family out your life. Don't cut your siblings out your life. I was like, all y'all got my number, but your perceptions and the things that you haven't dealt with and the things you're not talking about with yourselves, conversations that you're not going to have. I've already had that conversation with myself. And there's no need for, like, if you want to have this conversation, you got to come to the space. I no longer have the need to put myself out in the spaces where I don't need to be at. If I know something, it's like if I know a space is bad for me and I would have to carry a gun to go there, why would I go there knowing that I got to have the mindset of carrying a gun? Why do I need to go to that space? What's over there? What's over there in that space that I need? What's over there in that space that I need or I want? That means whatever's in that space based on what the needs or my wants, what does it really attract? What emotional attachment have I not dealt with? Everything's always going to lead back to assessing yourself in a deeper level. And you get to a point when you shed so many of these layers and you're like, man, this shit feel great. Your codependencies, all of that shit got to get shut away. All that shit got to get shut down and knocked off. All of it. That's why it's there. The attachments, the emotional attachments are our emotional wounds. The emotional attachments are our emotional wounds. So, like, use for an example, let's say you have an acceptance wound from your childhood trauma. Somebody that, like, your mother didn't give you the love that you felt you needed to have. Your father didn't give you the love that you felt that you had. Now you have a neglect wound or an acceptance wound, or when you were little, there was a point in life when you were little and you got bullied because of your hair or something about you got bullied about. So now you have a rejection wound because your perception is to try to continue to be. So now every time you go into a space, the first thing that goes into that space is always going to be the wound. The wound goes into the space. The unseen aspect. That's why I always talk about the unseen aspects. The unseen aspects of what go into your space first. That wound takes center stage. That trauma, that experience takes center stage and goes into that space. So now when you find yourself in a high rate of emotion, that means in that fear base, that means anger, anxiousness, anxiety, depression, grief, lack of apathy, all of those aspects. That means that's when it's triggering that means you go into a space and somebody's not giving you attention. Let's say you in a relationship, nigga ain't giving you no attention. Or what you defined as you needing attention. Or what you said, oh, I'm super clingy. I'm clingy. So you got to deal with my clinginess. That is an attachment wound. That is a neglect wound. So you feel that if somebody does not give you a certain amount of attention, it's seen as neglect, but now you got to find the root to that emotional attachment. Who was the first person, even into the space, and this when it gets deep, is like, it can be because your father gave you a overly amount of attention because he had a lack of to hide his emotional attachment. So inside of that space, his mother supported that emotional detachment by buying everything. So now in your current state, you're clingy, you sitting in an emotional attachment based on that neglect. If you don't get that, it's neglect. You don't get that, it's rejection. You see it as rejection. You see it as neglect. You see it as abandonment. You see it as one of your childhood wounds. That childhood wound became those adolescent emotions or the adolescent emotions. Then that became your adult identity. So now you held on to that identity. So when you're sitting in that space, like when I tell people we assess everything, you got to assess everything. Every aspect of yourself, that everything that triggers you is a point of access to a corresponding wound. A lot of us, I had a lot of attachment and acceptance wounds. Had a lot of acceptance wounds. Sitting there every fucking day, like trying to be accepted. And I remember having the same conversation. I remember listening to my pops. When like I was working in when I was working in the corporate aspect, when I was working in restaurants and working my jobs. And like my pops would be so fucking proud. He'd be like, yeah, he a manager and he do this and he do this. And I remember sitting there and I would like feel good and it would make me keep doing it. But then I started noticing during these aspects, it was like the only reason I was doing it was based on hearing that. But now it was like, then what? Now I needed something in my space. Since I was stuck in that attachment, I had to understand that my pops, he never got that from his father. He never got that from his pops. So that's how he viewed the world, through that wound. I was living through his shadow. Yeah. That confirmation, that validation. So I felt like I was doing something. But here's the part. Here's the part. This is how you know you're stuck in attachment. In order for me to remain doing that, I pleased him. I pleased that identity. In order for me to keep doing that, I had to, not assessing that wound, your unseen creates your space. Now what comes into my space based on me being in that position? Mm-hmm. What comes in my space based on that position? Friends or associates based on to the trauma. Family members always needing money. Relationships where it was always based on trips and shit, or what I could do or protect and provide. That false sense. None of these things, all of these things triggered the emotions when they didn't go the right way. That's how I knew I was stuck in attachment. So assessing that, going back, because I can go back and look at I can go back to every relationship that I was ever in. This is that key when you do, this is like layers of this work. I can go back to every relationship that I was in. I was the best version of my identity that I needed to be within that space. I understood that, for example, if a chick that I was with had deep wounds with their mother, issues with their mother, I had issues with my mother. Ooh, we bonded and connected. It was this irresistible chemistry. It was very, very physical and all of that good shit. So I was like stuck in that space. The moment that I started assessing something would consciously make me bring up my mother and they bring up their mother, I couldn't see myself in their maternal wounds. I couldn't see myself in it. So now I'm automatically on the other end of this to try to keep this space going. I gotta be the opposing energy in that space. Once I learned that key, you're always the opposing energy inside of that space. Because then I noticed that when I started really working on myself in an internal sense, not just on a physical sense, and the first time it was like the physical sense, so go to the gym, work out, or certain aspects of that nature, that's when the space would change. It needed to happen. Instead of me looking at it like they're blaming me like that I changed and you're growing and all this shit, instead of me getting my when that would happen and I was advancing, I was growing in the space and expanding outside of the space, the acceptance wounds came up. The rejection wound came up. So I would stop doing certain things that I would do. I would actually start sabotaging myself, or either I'm sabotaging myself or I'm sabotaging the relationship, which is a reflection of me. So I'm still sabotaging myself. So then I had to understand that aspect. We have to understand that aspect. Then you go through the next layering zone. Now I'm in spaces where now shit's changing because now I'm coming into connections. They're still stuck in attachment in some way, but they're more based, they're going into the realm of connection because now they're telling me things that I know I needed to hear. I had a homegirl, love her to death for that shit when she was like, she had this awesome relationship with her mother. Awesome relationship with her mother. She didn't have a strong relationship with her father. I told her, I was like, you need to go talk to your pops and go find out about your dad. She told me the same thing about my mother. I allowed that relationship to be what it was. She gave me that conversation. Best advice she ever gave me. I remember working on a relationship with my mother. It wasn't working on it to try to make it, oh my God, we're going to be friends and we're going to be going out anymore and all this shit be going to be. No, it wasn't for that. It was for me. Primarily, every relationship that you're going into is going to be for you. Every time you have an argument inside of a relationship, it's your inner child coming out anyway. Think about every argument that you ever had. Sit there and think about every argument that you ever had. This is one of the things that I give clients. Think about every argument you ever had. Who had the argument? It was never your identity. Your inner child had the argument. Your inner children were arguing. Whoever had the strongest identity was usually the motherfucker whoever had the strongest identity, but you're basically trying to go back and forth and do, you're trying to break the other person's identity. That's all you've ever been trying to do. Trying to get your inner child is trying to get you. Your inner child keeps coming to the surface. Your inner child keeps coming to the surface. You're going to give me, we're getting attention. We're getting attention. Let me show, because it's the same aspect of you sitting there and that same attention that you tried to get when you were little is the same attention you're trying to get within that space. But it requires removing that identity. That's why when you become vulnerable, which is actually you just became emotionally open, that's the first layer. You crack the emotional shell and you're in that space and now you're emotionally open. You don't have any emotional intelligence. It's going to tell you it's going to let you know about your emotional endurance and your emotional intelligence. Your emotional intelligence is at risk. It isn't high enough. That's why when you go into that space, the moment that you leave a relationship, friendship, whatever it is, you'll sit there and say, they drained me and I feel worthless. They made me feel insecure. They made me jealous. They didn't make you anything. They were the mirror giving you the aspects of what you already were. You tried to work on it from the external aspect. And the longer that you try to remain in the external aspect, you ain't defined the internal aspect that created the space in the first place. You ain't defined that yet. So it came out into that space. It corresponded and came into that space. It did everything it was supposed to do. He knocked you upside the head. He was supposed to do it. That's getting into acceptance. That Shorty took your car and wrecked it. She was supposed to do that. Because it helped you remove from the aspects of the physical aspect to get the emotion to come to the surface. You were hiding behind your car. You hid behind your job. You hid behind the degree. You hid behind your makeup. You hid behind these masks. And then, and it gets even deeper. It gets even deeper because then you sat there and the same way that you hid behind the weave and the lashes or you hid behind muscle tees and working out at the gym is the same way you hid behind your locks and your beard and your afro and your lock. I got locks now. I'm back to my natural self. Can't nothing stop me. You still acknowledging the same identity based on behavior. Yep. You sitting there okay. Sure. You want to be that? Sure. You can be that all day. Cool. Be that, be whatever thou you want to be. Those multiple eyes. One of the greatest books. 1 second. Two books that I always use as reference points and I give out as reference points. This book right here, Revolutionary Psychology, the practical spirituality that awakens the consciousness by Samuel Ann Weor. One great book, point of reference. And the second book is Gnostic Education. Learn how to think, not what to think. I love this book because I'm going back through it now. There's a chapter on imitation. And it breaks down the aspects of imitation and how motherfuckers stay stuck. Most of the stuff that you're doing is stuck in this role of imitation. That means you're going to do that based on this because they said it does this. That said it does this. That said it does this. That's the light. That's the projection. So when we're thinking about that light aspect, just like we just been going down, breaking down that thought process, the same shit niggas are doing on this one. They're both done. Both of these books are by Samuel Ann Weor. Both books are by Samuel Ann Weor. He references a lot of so you're looking at based on imitation. The same way that the love and light motherfucker will sit there in that space and talk about the projections and all of that aspect is the same way that the motherfucker that wants to stay team dark side all the fucking time. No problem. The motherfucker that wants to stay team dark side all the fucking time, they're both hiding from the aspects of their traumas. They're both hiding from the aspects of their trauma. Until you come to this neutral point and receive your skills, receive your lessons in your skills, you're not really going to advance. You're going to come back down. You're going to stay. You'll know that you're going to come back down because you spent so much time trying to maintain that identity of what it was. You need that breakdown. You need that job. You're going to need that. You're going to need to lose that job or get fired. You're going to need that relationship. You need that shit to happen so you can understand where your attachments are at. Because once you go through these integrations of your shadows and you will know when you are fully integrated into your shadow. Because now when you're building, it's not based on an emotional concept or that external aspect or one of your eyes are trying to keep your urges in play or you're trying to create things based on that space. You'll know when you crossed over. You'll know because there's multiple levels of your transition. Remember, none of this shit is meant for you to get comfortable. There's multiple levels to your transitions. There's multiple shadows that you're about to have to integrate with. Every shadow that comes up during your shadow work is what you're going to have to, you're integrating with it. That internal wounds of your mother, you have to integrate with that shadow. You must become your mother consciously because you're already unconsciously your mother. You're already unconsciously your father, even if you never met your father. Here's the thing. Shadow work, never over. That's the one thing. Shadow work's never over. Because once you have integrated with your shadows, Once you have integrated with your shadows and you're still here, now it's time to build in your shadows. I'm gonna use the example. For me building in the shadows is what I'm doing now. Me building in the shadows is what I do now. Everything from Friday night lectures to podcasts to everything else that I'm building out and doing in that space, to doing the counseling, therapy, healing, all of those aspects. I'm building inside. I'm building I'm integrated with my shadows. So now I can build the world I can build the world inside of the shadow. There's nothing coming in here that I haven't already assessed. So now I'm in a space with myself. Now I'm building myself in that authentic aspect. Now you advance now you understand, like when I use perfecting. Yeah. When it comes into let me read this. Why? Perfection is death. Perfection is death. Perfection is balance. Perfection is balance and death. Perfection is balance and transition. So every time that I perfected an aspect of myself, it's time for the next lessons. It's now time for me to do something else. As I'm building up here in my spiritual aspect. I'm building up here, and then it's coming into matriculation down here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, your perfected self is balance. It's simply being in the balance. It's simply being able to sit there with your emotions. I can sit here with my emotions, and if I get teary eyed, use an example. Now when I get teary eyed, if I'm watching a movie, if I get teary eyed or whatever, I understand that it's cleansing. I'm not looking at it as a weakness. It's a strength. I'm not looking at it as I'm in balance with it. I'm owning it. I'm owning these tears. I'm owning the fact that I don't have to think about shit. Yeah, every time that you master your emotions, you're coming into a higher level of maturity with yourself. You'll know that the key to understanding your emotional maturity, your emotional intelligence, and your emotional maturity is when you come back and you go into another space. Let's say, for example, we go through your sessions, we doing your internal with your work with your mouth. We're just bringing things to the surface. We're assessing, we're learning, reflecting, bringing it to that space. When you go back into those spaces or things come into your space, you're no longer going to react to it. Mm-hmm. You're no longer reacting to it. You're literally sitting there in that space and you're responding. You know how to respond. You respond with compassion. That means let's say you have a homegirl out of nowhere, homeboy out of nowhere, a relationship out of nowhere, ex come back up after retrograde, and they come into your space and they say something to you. You hold no ill content to them. You can forgive them. You can thank them the same way you went through your thanking and forgiveness process of your past wounds. You now can look at this person and you can see them and you can be like, I thank you for everything that you taught me. I forgive you. You were right. A lot of the things that you said, yeah, you was right. And because it shuts them down, because they only can go as far into their emotional aspects with you as they went into themselves. So now you're responding to inform. So now you're responding, you shut that space off. That's when you know that you're in that good space. When you're still going down here and you upset with some shit, when you're upset with shit, mad with people and looking for enemies, and even when you're talking, you feel yourself getting upset, you know you have some work to do. As long as you're being triggered, you know you got some work to do. You know, and that you got some internal shit you're going to deal with. Things are going to keep coming to the surface because it's multiple layers. You're not just healing this current cycle. You're healing every cycle that you've ever been through. You're not just healing this current cycle. You're healing every cycle that you've ever been through. You're going through everything that you're going through every catalog. You're going through and learning how to own your catalog. Use it as the example of you being an independent artist after you're now an independent artist after 40 years of after 40 years of you being on a label. You're no longer on the label. You're removing yourself from the label. The labels that you put in. What label you signed into? The label of the wounded child based on the mother. You're removing yourself from baby mama records. You're removing yourself from broken mother records. You're removing yourself from broken father records. So now you become the owner of I am my mother. I am my father. I am my ancestors. That's the depth of going into, I've said that before. That's the depth of saying you are your ancestors. It sounds cute to say you're your ancestors, but then you want to say your ancestors are mad, their energy. Everything that you ever read about ancestors, from Orishas, from the Orisha pantheon to the Congo rites. We got it, bro. We got it. Yes. You gotta own. You trying to own your masters. You come like, nigga, you know it's time for me to own my shit. It's time for me to own up. That's Ella. That's why when the channel came through for me when I said that LLC mentality. That LLC mentality is deeper than just saying that I have a business. I started doing my healing and my shadow work, and now, I'm gonna pick up. I'm gonna read niggas cards, and I'm gonna do. It's deeper than that. You got to own yourself first, because you only gonna be able to go as deep or be as open to that spiritual aspect coming into you and using you as that vessel as you. It only can go as deep as you have went deep into yourself. I can't do any of the work that I do. Let me correct that. I can do all the shit that I'm doing right now from a broken space. But all of these conversations would be different. All of these conversations, everything that I would say would be very, very different. Yeah, that's still dealing with your shadow. Your inner child. Your inner child is your ego. Your ego is the mask of your inner child. Y'all remember the movie what was the movie? Us? I think it was Us. Y'all remember when you remember when the two boys were sitting in the fucking closet, and he was like doing he was doing the shit like this, and they were doing the mirror imaging shit. They were doing the mirror game, and he was making him take his mask off and shit. That's what you're doing. You're removing these masks you're removing these identities that you keep forcing your inner child to wear. Because every mask that you put on is a mask that your inner child has to wear. So you got on that mat, your inner child has that mask on that they put on from not dealing with the aspects of your mother. Now everybody else gonna wear that same mask. Your inner child sitting on that little post, like, pay attention to me. This is a moment for it. Because that false mind aspect is going to keep you in comfort. The behavior. You're still reacting to the behavior. You're still looking at it as, ooh, but yeah. You out here feeling disrespected. Why? Why does it bother you? You ask yourself the question, why does it bother you that you feel that? Why does this bout with disrespect bother you? And you allow yourself to sit with it. That's one of the things that we go through in sessions all the time. When I go to sessions with my clients all the time, like, why do you feel disrespected? Why do you feel this inherent need to prove yourself to people in that space, in that emotional catalyst? What was your first bout? What was your first memory of doing that? What was your first memory of seeing that? Let's get to that point. You got to take that trigger, pull it. I did the same shit last week. Pull that shit in so you can actually start dealing with it. What did that represent? Because 9 times out of 10, anybody inside of your space that's making you feel disrespected outside of that space, it's going to be based in a wound. It's always based in a wound. You're still channeling. Yes. Uh-huh. Because when we look at the aspects of spirits, I love how this is the question at Spirit. I love how y'all asking the questions. Everybody fell in line. So you're going into the space of when we thinking about this is another thing. I wanted to get into. I'm glad you brought that up about the spirits. A lot of the times when you're dealing with those spirits, a lot of time when you're dealing with these spirits, and you feel like a spirit coming through and they're giving you that aspect into your life, into that energy, or going into the deep of you seeing them, a lot of the spirits that you're coming into contact with are not really they're lesser energy of they're the lesser energy, they're the lesser spirits or the lesser projections. So that means if you have a vengeful, evil, you got some dark energy coming towards you, and somebody is like a spirit coming to you and they trying to choke your ass out in your dreams, all it is your subconscious bringing to the surface. If it's a man or a woman, whatever the energy is, it's going to lead, once you sit with it, it's leading you to the wound. That vengeful energy, that spirit is leading you to the wound. I talked about that the other day when I'm like, motherfuckers like, yes, Ganesh is coming through right now. It's Ganesh coming through for obstacles. Okay, cool. Ganesh is going to remove all of the obstacles. Who tried to shoot you in your dream? Do you know who the person was? Let me go to my notebook of dreams. Get that right now. That's the spirit that's coming through that aspect. Like whenever you have people that you never directly met, that's the spirit. That's that spirit or that energy coming through that space, and that's that they're coming through that space to teach you something. They're coming through that. Okay, I'm gonna ignore this purple light that's now coming from my body. Let me correct that. I had a small build-up of pressure earlier this week. I had a small buildup of pressure earlier this week, but it was only because I wasn't. What happened? Damn, that shit was so light. It wasn't really pressure. I've been feeling this irradiating in my heart chakra, my chest, and my heart chakra. So like when I've been like in a certain space with myself, it's like I'm feeling the it's like feeling my I'm feeling that energy cycle. My energy cycle. The pressure for me is like my energy cycling faster, and I'm like now learning not to like stop it. For me, like that pressure is like I'm learning not to stop it. But yes, now going back to Queen of Monies. Oh God, my eye. Got smoke in my eye. Ooh. In my notebook, the dream about being shot is talking about is the aspects of fighting for, you're fighting to survive. Pain inflicted is like you're dealing with this pain that's being inflicted onto you by others. Yeah. So you in that space. Yeah. And going deeper into that aspect, when you're going deeper into it about being shot by like a man, it's like there's something you're battling, a painful aspect of something that you know or that you're not bringing to the surface. But yeah, that pressure, like the best way to understand the aspect of when you're going through it, like you feeling pressure, is to assess. It's like to look back, like when are you feeling the pressure the most? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You got to get to the, for you, you know, you got to get to the roots of why you getting stressed out. Like why are you stressed out? Usually our dreams about our, like whenever we're stressed out, it's like we're trying to maintain something instead of allowing it to fall away. But as we're playing with the cards, yeah, you gotta allow that energy to cycle and break away what it needs to break away. That pressure, that energy to that, yeah, you gotta allow that shit to cycle through and break away what it needs to break away. Allow it to fall away. If it's not meant to be there, it's not meant to be there. If it's not, yeah, you will fight yourself tooth and fucking nail. You'll fight yourself. I remember you will fight yourself tooth and fucking nail to sit there in that space to try to keep that in. No, gotta let it go, let it fall away. Because you can't see it when it's like a lot of times we try to like keep it held close to us or keep it on us, but we can't see it for what it is because we're looking at it. It's transparent and it's only showing us us. That mask, that identity, that stress, that issue, that problem, that whatever it is, it's naturally transparent. The reason that you cannot see it in its or come into that state of transparency is because you're holding it and it's showing you the trauma. It's showing you the event. It distorts. That's the aspect of it distorting the image of what's under it. So whenever that trigger, that emotional aspect comes to the surface, it's forcing you to remove that, peel that back so you can be like, oh, that's what that is. That's what I'm not dealing with. That's what it's been under there. Because until then, you're only going to keep going back and forth with it. Stuck in the polarity. But yes, also about this time, keep coming with the questions. Keep coming with the questions. We building tonight. We building. Keep coming with the questions. I'm going to do a collective, nice little collective reading with the energy. And then if you would like a reading, if you like a reading, the readings I do during the lectures are donation based. Mm-hmm. The key of you being in that place of survival mode is why do you feel the need to stay in that survival mode? Why do you feel that what is triggering the survival? What is triggering you? What is triggering your survival? Those are the questions that you got to put into yourself. Like, what is triggering your survival? And then getting like sourcing and going to those things. Like, what's triggering my survival? we can honestly, you can honestly go back, but like, yeah, I'm in survival mode, but like, what is triggering me to stay in the survival mindset? That way you're changing yourself, because that's the negative. Are you not used to? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going through 3 things. Taking care of yourself. That is a good indicator on that point. Being alone, the build on to that, you're not alone. Understand that you're not alone. The lack of family or friendship support, we have to assess that. So being in that alone space, I'm gonna let you know this right now. Feeling that you are feeling the feeling of being alone. You have to take away that almost and allow yourself to allowing those emotions of that feeling of being alone. I'm gonna do this collective reading. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put the number up now. Yeah. But like, yeah. For anybody that's interested in those anybody that's interested within a consultation, getting that doing a consultation or a reading, you can hit me in the comments. You can hit me if you follow me on Facebook, it's Dar Samdi Ra, or you hit me on Instagram, it's Papa_Lucy666, or you can hit me at the number. Put the number in there now. No. Yeah, send a text to the number. We can set up a consultation and get you right with that. But right now, what I'm about to do, not having control, a guy who created should have all the control, but that ends survival. Yep, exactly. You're not looking at it based on control is a false aspect that's going to keep you stuck. Control is a false aspect or a narrative that's going to keep you stuck. If I say that I'm a god, if I say that I'm a goddess, if I say that I'm in this higher realm, if I say that I'm an owner, if I say that I'm a king or a queen, if I say that I'm a king or a queen, for example, that means I survey everything that my thoughts drive into my emotions. The king and the queen is aspects of the drivers are the vehicles of the emotions. So I got to go into my thoughts. If I say that I'm a god or a goddess, that means I'm in the aspect of the generator aspect of going into what I'm creating based on my thoughts. What do my thoughts keep creating? Therefore, my king and queen or my inner child that I give that crown to, what are they surveying? What are they using? What are they using to? What are we building into that space? And as you keep going higher into yourself, the energy off the first card, I'm gonna do this collective reading. If you're interested within something direct to you, just drop it. The Cash App's at the top. The Cash App link's at the top. You're in a space right now where you're in those 2 points. That's that energy going into that space. You're in that space where you're going into 2 points. You either can continue doing the same shit that you've been doing, or it's time to go into that road, that path of assessment. The energy is always the same. Your energy is always the same energy. You're always pulling from the same source. The thing that stops the source of the flow of your energy are those emotional triggers that come up when it comes time for you to make that choice. So take for the example for Queen. When you take to the example of the moment that you are making, like you have to ask yourself of taking care of yourself, are you taking care of yourself based on the internal aspect, or are you taking care of yourself based on maintaining the identity or the behavior? That means, am I taking care of myself as in that because the force of being alone, so I'm trying to be the independent, I'm trying to be this, I'm learning to be independent. What identity is being triggered as you're trying to build into that aspect for yourself of in that not having the support system into that space? That's the first thing you're gonna have to look at, because those are the triggers that come up. That's the anxiety, that's the fear, that's that aloneness, not belong. Those are those aspects that come to the surface first. Going into the aspect of that Seven of Pentacles. The thing that's stopping that, that financial independence. You got to understand the financial independence. Your independence in your financial aspect of being is always based in, as we talked about earlier, is based in your emotional intelligence. So if I have a fear every time, like when we look at financial dependency, financial independence, and aspects of that nature support, that root or that byproduct in the sense of that financial independence is always going to be based in that fear that drives that independence. So that struggle, that survival, what is your struggle rooted in? What is your survival rooted in? What is that feeling rooted in? What is that emotion? What is the emotional catalyst that's driving that financial independence? As long as that emotional catalyst is present, that the stream to financial independence will never, it cannot be visualized. You can't see it, because every time that you try to see financial independence, every time that we try to see financial independence, it's always going to go through the filters of that emotional catalyst. So that fear, that sadness, that being upset, what does it look like? We have to assess the emotional aspect that's in front of it. Mm-hmm. Johnny Mac dropped in the part, You see a lot. So, like, the question would be, do you see a loss of family because of your financial independency? Or what is the depth of it? Is like, if you're financially independent, is like, what I'm seeing, what I feel into the aspect of with that is like, that financial independence and the loss of your family. What about the loss of your family brings you to fear of financial independence? What is that status of your family? What is your family's independent? What is your family? What is the reflection of your family when it comes to the aspects of your independence? Those are the things that we peel back and we have to look at. So that goes into that Seven of Pentacles. The Seven of Pentacles leads right into that same thought process. It illustrates holding on to the old grounding. You keep trying to make this decision. You gotta you being the black sheep of the family. That's what you are. You not being attached to the same narratives in that loss aspect is like, you have to understand that your family down here, your family, the family that you came into, is your karmic family. That's your karmic family. They're a part of your soul contract. They're your karmic family. What you'll notice is you're not them. That's your karmic family. That's your karmic family. Removing to assess that aspect of like that fear aspect of like losing your family, you're gonna get to this point. That middle point is understanding that they're related to you based onto those old aspects. Uh-huh. So when you look, like, use the example, I remember for a long time with my family, I used to always be like, anytime people met my family or came to my mom's house, came to my parents' house, every time they came to the family, I was like, I'm adopted. Because I put I'm answering two questions at once. So I was like, I'm adopted. Because every time people saw my family, I put an emotional buffer in between. So like when they saw how my mother acted or my sisters acted, how family members acted, I always had that buffer. Like, remember, I'm adopted. I'm not a part of this. This isn't me. I unconsciously did that when I was younger, not really understanding why I did it. But when I came older, I was like, nigga, I am adopted. I adopted these aspects of that family. Mm-hmm. And the key to allowing them to shed away is to understand that the aspects of the mother, the father, the paternal instincts, cousins, uncles, aunts, all of those aspects, that key of the key of allowing that gap to naturally happen is to assess those emotional attachments. That means going into the space of the mother or the no mother aspect, going into the space of understanding the relationship with your father and what it meant, going through those spaces. And as you now assess those aspects, these emotional aspects, you're now going to shift into, okay, cool. I'm not my karmic father's child. I'm not my karmic mother's child. I'm not the karmic auntie's niece. I am my aunt. I am my father. I am my pops. I am these people. So now that separation, now when that natural separation occurs, and now when you're taking your path to go deeper with yourself, you're not, those aspects are good as long as they are present for a reason. They are present for that reason because they're there to trigger off those points. So use an example. You on your Facebook page and you posted something on your Facebook page and you were talking about you felt good after a meditation or you did a cleansing ritual, and somebody come up on your page and be like, they say some underhanded, some slick shit, talk about that's that witchcraft shit. You're going to come into that space with yourself. It's going to trigger. If it triggers you, makes you mad, makes you feel some type of way, why is this bothering me? I've already accepted that this is my karmic family. I've already accepted that they're related to me based on traumatic experiences, the traumatic aspects or the experiences that keep me connected to them emotionally. Now, if I'm doing this over here in my space and it's for the best aspect of healing myself, then what would, not my reaction, like fuck niggas, what would be my response? Your response could be something as simple as blocking them on Facebook. Once you've assessed that emotional aspect and why it's bothering you, simple, you can just block. You don't have to respond. You don't have to react to that. Your best response is you're already doing what you're doing. What's happening is in the behavioral sense. They no longer can attach to you because what's coming up when you meditated? What's coming up when you did a cut the cord ritual? What's coming up when you did that? What's coming up during that detox? What's coming up during that fast? These are some of those examples. Everything that's coming up is being shown through that aspect. And that's now Now you're looking at it as a response. Now you're looking at it as a response. The emotional catalyst, and now going to Dawson. The emotional catalysts are used to create your identity. So if you're always angry, you'll create an identity. You'll create an identity or identities based on your anger. So those different. It don't matter how much anger or how little anger you are. You're going to create identities that are going to be used to house your anger. Therefore, inside of your space, you're going to project and have things in your space that are based up to keep you angry. So now every relationship that you get in is going to be based on niggas with anger. It's going to be based on motherfuckers making you angry so you can maintain that mentality. Until you understand the root of that emotional catalyst, why that emotional catalyst is staying so prevalent inside of your life. Appreciate it. Thank you, Marilyn Williams. Thank you, Marilyn Williams. It's understanding that emotional catalyst. That goes into the same aspect with Queen's question. You go into the same aspect. Thank you. Much appreciation. That's going into that space with yourself of the same emotional catalyst that built that karmic family, that soul tie, those debts. Understanding your purpose. Now you're coming into this space for yourself, like, you know what? It's time for me to assess my tree of life. The biggest thing with the emotional aspect, the Ten of Pentacles. The Ten of Pentacles is the representation of, we see the Father, Mother, and the Son. We see the Trinity holding up the tree of life. And we see at the bottom, that little head at the bottom, that little head right there at the bottom, that is you coming out and crowning into this space. So now we're assessing the original crowning or the original aspect before we go into that little void. You see that little void in the back? That's that gateway in the dog. That's that way into that nothingness, that death. So we have to understand our experiences, our expressions, our perceptions, our thoughts, the pillars that we lived ourselves in, the pillar that we were on. You can't go back to that pillar. That tree that you came from, you can't go back to that tree. I cannot go back on to the tree that I fell from, but I can assess that tree on my way down. I'm now down looking up at that tree as I go through my putrefaction process, or I go through this breakdown process before I now build my own tree. My emotional aspects. Everything that you're doing, that emotional catalyst that you use to create the identity to stay within that space, is going to have to be fed by an urge. No problem. It's fed by that urge. You'll know when you're using that. No problem. You will know when you're using emotional catalyst to build your identity, because that's when you get triggered. You will know when you use the emotional catalyst to build that identity, because you will be triggered. Because when you're not using an identity and you're just pure you're in that authenticity of you're learning you don't get triggered. That same trigger, now you pulling it towards yourself and you're like, oh shit. Now you're responding instead of reacting. We're shifting from unconsciously. In the unconscious state, you look outside of yourself and you see everything outside of you as whatever it is. Consciously, when we understand that our thoughts drive our emotions in this vicarious or these vehicles, we start seeing that when I have the thought, I create that in my space. So if I have sexual tension, as an example, use sexual tension as an example. If I got sexual tension, I create things in my space that are going to fit to keep me within the identity of the behavior that can lead all the way back to the trauma. So I'll use everything else to deflect me or keep me distracted away from dealing with what does this tension really mean deep rooted inside of, what is this tension really leading me to? What is this attention that I want from this space? Because when you think about it from the higher level, that tantric aspect, that release is healing. What are you releasing while you're healing? It does you no good to release if you're going to take the same shit back in. So that tension that you're feeling is that fleeing of control. That fleeing of control. As long as I can keep doing it this way, I have control. As long as I can keep using this urge or maintaining the urges, I have control. It's time to let go of that fucking control. Let go of that shit. Let go of fucking control. Allow your emotions to come to the surface. Allow yourself to be vulnerable with yourself for the first time ever in your life. Allow it to happen. I promise you that once you allow it to happen and you get used to that process, you'll never want to go back to not being vulnerable. You'll never go back to I want to be hard. Why do you want to be hard for? You can't absorb shit. You can't learn yourself while you hardened up and mad at the fucking world. And that leads into that moving forward. That's that Knight of Wands. So many times, but it's a big time for assessment. That's why this card came up first. Before you start allowing that, because this is what happens a lot of times. We use the expression, that expression pops up, that expression, that feeling, that emotion pops up, then we want to run with it. It's time to sit down with that shit. Because if you notice, it just keeps repeating itself. You keep doing the same three things. Most people do the same three things. It's broken down to the same three pillars in equivalent to that tree of life. You do the same three things. You do the job to support your triumphs, and then that gives you your expressions. You keep doing the same three things. So you wake up, you step into the identity for that space, and then you use that as your, what you call it. Yeah, you got to let go of that control. You got to let go of control. You got to allow, because as long as you hold on to that control, that's just the worst thing in the fucking world, to hold on to control. You trying to hold on to, man, I'm going to hold on to this. If I hold on, if I can control it, then no, it just maintains an identity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got that, you hold on to that identity, which leads into that Nine of Cups. That Nine of Cups represents that aspect of that wishful thinking. You have to, just like we just talked about that aspect of that control. You keep trying to move forward to hold on control, you're always going to be in that space with yourself and trying to do wishful thinking. You're going to wish something was going to be better. You're still wishing. Remember, it don't come from no fucking where. It comes from somewhere. That control that you're trying to hold on to in your current state is based on the wishing of something that happened in your past. So it could be something, and it can be something so simple that you didn't even think about it because it's not based in thought, it's based on the path of the heart. That same hold on to control of a situation can be rooted in that emotional aspect of your mother not being there, your father leaving, or somebody leaving you a long time ago. And now ever since then, you've been in this constant state of motherfuckers leaving you. So now you're wishing that motherfuckers would stay with you or stay in your space. But in reality, they keep leaving away so you can deal with the emotion of why motherfuckers keep leaving. Who was the first motherfucker that left? Who was the first motherfucker that did you that way? You got to deal with it. You got to tap into that. Or that wishful thinking you don't be, all you do is, I wish my cup was full. Okay. Honor your thoughts. And that last card is going to go into that nurturing. The last card is going into that nurturing aspect. That Queen of Wands. You got a decision to either keep doing the same shit you've been doing or keep going forward. Sitting there with that 7 aspect. That being mad that you ain't creating what you want to create, but you created everything anyway. Assessing that tree. It's the end of you being you grounded and rooted in all the other bullshit. Moving forward so hastily and fast. Time to check that shit. That wishful thinking. You gotta let go of that control. Spirit keep telling you to let go of control, and then every time you don't do it, because the spirit, remember, everything comes down here based in duality. So the spirit tell you to let go of control, you don't want to let go of it. The spirit gonna bring shit into your space that's gonna force you to let go of it. Spirit gonna be like, oh, so you wanna play? All right, cool, let's play. And then now you sitting there mad and upset at yourself because you know what you should have did, but you didn't do it. And now you sitting there going, now, since you stuck within that time or that emotional aspect, now the behavior, now whatever behavior that you settle with in that space, now you got to do that all over again. Retrogrades, Jupiter retrogrades, all the retrogrades. That's all that shit is. Something that you have not dealt with. Something that you have, man, I keep doing the same shit. I don't know why. Why does this same shit keep happening to me? Why do people not like me? Fuck people not liking you. Yeah. Every time you go through that, you're like, man, it's time for me to do it, but what will it look like? As we broke down this hard time, stop looking for what it's supposed to look like. You holding on to that image. If I do this, then everything else, no. Everything else will not be fixed, or everything else will be fixed. Ultimately, everything will be fixed because everything we put into a position, your perception, your perspective is going to change. And as you apologize to yourself, we understand that, or we come into this understanding that your apology, the only true apology is change behavior. So now we go into the aspects, as we said earlier on, when you're going through that forgiveness process, it's not for them. When you're going through that apology process, it's not for them. Because regardless, if I apologize to you, I'm changing my behavior. I'm not expecting you to change your behavior. I'm changing my behaviors. I'm acknowledging my behaviors. I'm investing in the changes of my behaviors. Because what's going to happen after that needs to happen. So if I change my behavior from being, changing my behavior from being so damn controlling, yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like, man, that ain't yours. Man, fuck that. Okay, cool. I'm not going to do it no more. All right, cool. What is this really telling me? I'm sitting here being mad and upset, but I've been thinking about it you thought about it for weeks and months. Like, you know what? I want to do some shit on my own. I want to change something else. I want to do something else. That's your opportunity. You're always in the right space. What are you about to do with it? You're always in the right space. What you going to do with it? What are you going to do with the lesson that it's time to learn? What are you going to do? I've talked about it before. Like, COVID-19 saved my life. COVID-19, when you're going through your process of this internal work, when we're going through these processes of our shadow work, our internal work, our healing, you are going into the grave and into the womb at the same exact time. The same womb that you're stepping into is the same grave that you're stepping into. Uh-huh. I went in, like the same womb that you went into is the same grave. Look at that womb as a grave. You asked and you put yourself into that space. There's no other way. If there was another way, it would present itself. And it does present itself. That's another key with that. You will always have the chance to control, to stay within the same pattern or go into the new pattern. That new pattern is going to make you emotionally the new pattern is what makes you emotionally triggered. The new pattern opens up the emotional triggers. The old pattern, staying in that same, for example, for like staying in that control state, you ain't gonna feel shit. You'll feel good. You'll feel good. You'll feel comfortable. You'll feel the same states of complacency. But that path that's triggering the fuck out of you, making you upset, yeah, that's the one. But yeah, again, these two books, consultations, everything from consultation, setting up a consultation, readings, all services, all of the stuff's inside of the description. Yes, all of that's a part of shadow work. Yes, you got to accept that. Which session do I recommend? The way that I do sessions, I'm never going to tell you like, yo, what sessions that we're going to do. So we start with that. The main thing is we start with the shadow work consultation. Setting up a shadow work consultation with me. It's an hour. It's a minimum of an hour 30. It does get longer at the depth that we get into. And everything that you just talked about, the based on the goal to completely separate, to understand the aspects of your family, releasing from attachment, all of that aspect, that's all into your shadow work. Shadow work consultation is $100. We schedule it, set the time up. It's a Zoom call. Hit you up. I send you once you make the payment, set it up, conversation, and from there, after the consultation, I'm gonna write up everything that we talked about and discussed, and then I'm gonna put in the recommendations, because it can be something as simple as you just need some guided meditation, or you might just need a couple days out the week, or you might need some in-depth with shadow work therapy. It just depends on what we bring up in that consultation. Then because my the shadow work therapy sessions is 4 to 6 weeks minimum, 1 day a week. We meet up. We set up the appointment 1 day a week, assessing, learning, going through the healing regimen, going through learning the lessons, and we go from there. But yeah, I will never tell you, yo, you need to go, yo, we go. Nah. I want to sit down. I want to have a conversation with you so we can do that shit right. No problem. What's I doing? Yep. It's time to go. Yeah. You gotta go into that void. Everything you take into the void, everything you take into that abyss is you. Everything you take into that void is you. Some shit that you gotta have to deal with. Everything that you haven't dealt with comes out in the void. Everything that you have not dealt with comes out into the void. In our dreams, in our subconscious, it can be monsters, you getting shot in the head, all that good stuff, getting strangled, eating cake, wearing shirt. It's all coming into it based on the symbol. Key is, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I only can bring you to the door. You got to be ready to step through. Everybody brings you to the door. What are you doing to step through? But yeah. Ooh, child. Put that right there, cool. But yes, again, consultations, readings. All my readings are mini consults. Setting up that consultation, see how far we need to go, see how far it's time to go. All of that. When you're ready, let's do that shit. I want you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best. Desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to become the best version of yourself because that's the space that I come from. I want you to desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to tap into your greatness. Only way to come into your greatness is to be honest with yourself. You ready? We can do the work. You ain't ready? You're always gonna. When you're ready, when you're not ready, you're always gonna go to the next point of resistance. But yeah, the numbers in the comments. You follow me on Facebook. It's Darth Samdi Ra. Hit me in the messenger in Instagram. It's Papa_Lucy666. Papa_Lucy666. Hit me in the DM or you hit the number 910-249-999-399. Or you can put it in the comments and we can build from there. Desire you to be the best. Want you to be the best. Y'all ain't got no more questions. We're going to end this session. Allow it to resonate. You here for a reason. You here for a reason. What are you going to do with it? I love you. We love us. Ashe.